Chapter 75. Tan Xiu's speed was very fast. When he rushed back to campus, he found his mother sitting in the office, accompanied by his class teacher, Han Qingguo, who was chatting with her. Seeing this situation, Tan Xiu's hanging heart slowly relaxed. He was thinking whether he should find someone to protect his mother in secret. What if he provoked a powerful enemy one day and they couldn't retaliate against him and turned around to retaliate against his mother? "Mom, why did you come to campus?" Tan Xiu looked at his mother and curiously asked. Upon seeing her son's arrival, Su Lingyun immediately stepped forward to pull his hand and hurriedly asked, "Xiu, Mom has something urgent to talk to you about." "What did you do to your uncle's family?" "The husband and wife came to our restaurant today, crying and kneeling, asking for your forgiveness." "What the hell is going on?" Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then said, "Mom, I went out to buy things a few days ago and met Su Shangguan and Zhang Meiyun. They humiliated me the moment they met and even used their connections to get the school to expel me. A friend of mine was also with me at that time. My friend's family runs a business, which is 100 times more powerful than Shangguan Real Estate. Because my friend spoke up for me, he was insulted by Su Shangguan. What we didn't expect was that my friend's father happened to pass by and suddenly flew into a rage, wanting to teach Su Shangguan a lesson. If my guess is correct, he must have dealt with Su Shangguan, so he came to beg you, wanting me to speak up for him." Su Lingyun's complexion greatly changed. An angry expression appeared on her face as she angrily said, "How can Su Shangguan do this? No matter what, you are still his nephew by blood. How can he treat you like this? Son, don't worry. If he dares to use his connections to get the school to expel you, I'll find him." Beside him, Han Qingguo also had an angry expression on her face. She recalled the attitude of some of the school's leaders towards Tan Xiu and understood some of Su Shangwen's actions. Immediately, she said, "Su, big sister, don't worry. As long as I'm in school, no one dares to bully Tan Xiu, and no one dares to kick him out of school." Su Lingyun said gratefully, "Thank you, Teacher Su. I've heard about what happened. Thank you for taking Xiu in. Our Xiu is a very well-behaved child. It's all my fault for not being capable enough to make him suffer." Han Qingguo held Su Lingyun's hands and said kindly, "Please don't say that. If Tan Xiu hadn't saved me a year ago, he wouldn't have had a car accident. This is what I should do." Su Lingyun already knew that her son had saved Han Qingguo, but she was still very grateful. After a long while, she turned her head and looked at Tan Xiu, saying, "Son, what should we do now? Your uncle, the husband and wife are still staying in our restaurant and don't want to leave." Tan Xiu sighed inwardly. "After all, Su Shangguan is my mother's blood brother. My mother is kind-hearted and can't stand Su Shangguan's insistent pleading. I'm afraid she doesn't want to see Su Shangguan fall into such a miserable end. What do you think, Mom?" Su Lingyun hesitated and didn't know what to say for a while. After all, Su Shangguan's way of doing things was too ruthless. If he wasn't her son's classmate, her son would have been humiliated and might even lose his studies. But blood is thicker than water. For a time, she was caught in a dilemma. Tan Xiu helplessly said, "Mom, I'll let it go this time. I'll tell my classmate to make his father stop. However, if Su Shangguan dares to humiliate us again in the future, I won't let him go so easily." Although Tan Xiu said so, he was sneering inwardly. He only told Yuan Zhengxian to stop, but he didn't tell Long Wenhan and Chen Zhizhong to stop. It was meaningless to talk about familial affection with people like Su Shangguan and his wife. Su Lingyun hesitated and said, "Xiu, do your words count?" Tan Xiu nodded affirmatively and said, "This matter happened because of me, so my words will definitely count. Don't worry. You'll understand when you go back to the restaurant." In the end, Tan Xiu pacified Su Lingyun and persuaded her to go back. At the door of the office, Han Qingguo looked at Tan Xiu with a strange expression and meaningfully said, "Tan Xiu, you didn't tell the truth to your mother, did you?" If your classmate's father really wanted to punish Su Shangguan because his son was humiliated, I'm afraid you won't be able to intervene. Be honest and tell me what happened. Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, Miss Han, it's not good for a woman to be too smart. Han Qinggu proudly smiled and said, Who said it's not good for a woman to be too smart? It's not the era where a woman without talent is a virtue. No, you brat, don't change the topic and tell me what happened. Well, since you're so curious, I'll tell you. Tan Xiu helplessly said. Do you remember I told you that I met the Endless Virtue Pharmaceuticals' big boss, Chen Zhizhong? I really cured his illness, so he owes me a big favor. At that time, when Su Shangguan humiliated me, he happened to bump into him. So he was very angry and wanted to make Su Shangguan pay the price. Is it really like that? Han Qinggu was surprised. Is it really Chen Zhizhong? Tan Xiu rolled his eyes and said, I'm going to take a leave tonight to see Chen Zhizhong. Do you want to come with me? You want to take a leave again? Han Qinggu angrily said. Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, Miss Han, I don't have a class at night, so I'm just going to talk to him. You can't make things difficult for my mother, can you? Han Qinggu felt relieved and the anger on her face quickly vanished. She said, If that's the case, then I'll give you a night's leave. Remember, don't be late for class tomorrow morning. Yes. Tan Xiu nodded with a smile. He originally had an appointment with Chen Zhizhong tonight and was thinking about how to leave. He didn't expect that his mother would come to the campus and help him a lot. That's right. The principal looked for me today and asked me to give you a week's leave, said Han Qinggu. Tell me honestly, what's going on? Did he really agree? Tan Xiu was surprised. More than agree. Han Qinggu angrily said. He even told me to make up a lie to deceive your mother, saying that you're going to participate in a subject competition in another city. Judging from your words, you already know the reason. Tell me quickly, what happened? Tan Xiu's mind was racing as he grinned and said, Someone's teacher is sick, and it's very serious. I have some medical skills, don't I? So that person asked me to go to another city to treat his teacher. You also know that I don't have time to go to another city. In order to deceive him, I told him that I don't have time, and I can't explain it to the school and my mother. Who would have thought that he would go to the principal and ask you to make up a reason to hide it from my mother? You're not lying to me, are you? Tan Xiu raised his palm and said seriously, I swear in the name of my future wife that I'm not lying to you. Pfft. Han Qinggu rolled her eyes at Tan Xiu and scolded him with a smile, How old are you, brat? You're already thinking about your future wife. Alright, leave your mother to me. Remember, you only have a week, starting from today. Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, It seems that my leave tonight is in vain. You deserve it. Han Qinggu smiled happily. As Tan Xiu returned to the classroom, he saw Su Xiangfei glaring at him with an angry face. Tan Xiu just glanced at him and directly ignored him. He returned to his seat and looked at Yuan Chuling, who was diligently studying. He suddenly curiously asked, Hey, how come you've changed today? I've never seen you so diligent before. Yuan Chuling grinned and said, Hee hee, that's because I was muddle-headed before. You know, Tan Xiu. Actually, my parents' divorce is fake. Although they've applied for a divorce certificate, their relationship is better than before. What's going on? Tan Xiu was confused. I don't know about the specifics. Yuan Chuling shook his head. My mother told me that they have their own difficulties in applying for a divorce, so she won't tell me about it for now. Wait until I graduate from college and have the ability to survive in society, then she'll tell me the whole story. I gave up on myself before because I didn't understand them. I won't do it again. Tan Xiu suddenly understood. He patted his shoulder and said with a smile, Do you want me to help you? How will you help me? Yuan Chuling was confused. There's only 1 month left before the college entrance test. I'm now racing against time to study, so that I can get a higher score in the college entrance test to make my parents happy. Tan Xiu said with a smile, wait for me for a week. I'll teach you my learning experience a week later. As long as you follow my teaching, your grades will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Really? Yuan Chuling was ecstatic. Tan Xiu confidently said with a smile, haven't you seen my previous results? If I want to, I can easily get the first place in the school. At this moment, Cheng Yan-nan, who had been eavesdropping on Tan Xiu and Yuan Chuling in the front row, suddenly turned her head and said, Tan Xiu, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. We're all classmates. Since you can impart your learning experience and skills to Yuan Chuling, it shouldn't be a problem for you to teach me too, right? Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, all right. Since you helped me today, I promise you. Cheng Yan-nan nodded with satisfaction. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and said, can I take 2 more female classmates? Think about it. Our class has a few students with excellent results in the college entrance test. It will be very beneficial for our teacher in charge, Miss Han. Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before nodding and said, all right. But the number can't be too many. Tan Xiu didn't have a good impression of his classmates in the class. In his opinion, these students had become stupid from studying. Whatever others said, they would believe it and join in the commotion. If it wasn't for Cheng Yan-nan's words, and if it wasn't for Han Qingwu's benefit, he really didn't feel like teaching them. Yuan Chuling said, eldest brother, you said you want to wait for a week. Why don't you start now? Tan Xiu said with a smile, I'll leave the school this afternoon after school. I've asked Miss Han for a week's leave. You want to ask for a week's leave? Yuan Chuling involuntarily exclaimed. In a flash, the whole class turned their heads and looked at Tan Xiu and Yuan Chuling. In the eyes of those students, Tan Xiu was an ignorant and incompetent student. They didn't know what kind of fucking luck he had last time, but he got the first place in the cohort. Unexpectedly, he was becoming less and less like a student, skipping classes and asking for leave. Chapter 76. A 6-month-old child's face could easily change. The sun was shining brightly in the afternoon, but as the evening approached, the sky began to drizzle. The entire South Gate town was shrouded in a hazy misty rain. Vaguely, a few lights lit up one after another. In the villa, Tan Xiu was sitting cross-legged on the balcony of his bedroom, silently sensing the situation inside his body. The 9 stars in his body had become more and more dazzling after several days of cultivation. Even though he was sitting cross-legged, the feeling of power was still like a surging wave that transmitted to his limbs and 5 bones. He was very clear that the practice of the skin-strengthening stage was imperative. After he returned from helping Jia Ruidao, he would go all out to find the herbs and spirit stones. If it was really difficult to find them in a short time, then he could only ask Qin Zhizhong for help. The path of cultivation is full of hardships and dangers. But I'm bound to ride the wind and break through the waves, and set foot on glory. In the past, he was rarely in a predicament of lacking cultivation resources. But the resources on Earth were scarce. If he wanted to cultivate the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, then he must plunder all the available resources, even if it was extremely difficult. He had the ambition of an eagle soaring in the sky, courageously going against the current. Facing all the difficulties, he firmly believed that they would not stump him. With his perception, he immediately sensed Qin Zhizhong's arrival. In the hall on the first floor, Qin Zhizhong was surprised as he looked at the villa's decoration. He found that even the place he lived in was not as good as this villa. Suddenly, he couldn't help but envy Long Hanwen. After all, his son had such foresight and accurate investment. He was definitely an elite of the commercial street, an outstanding talent. You're here. Tan Xiu came down from the stairs and said with an expressionless face. Qin Zhizhong's heart tightened as he respectfully greeted and called out, Master. This time, Tan Xiu didn't refute him. Instead, he came to the living room and sat on the sofa, calmly saying, I have received several registered disciples, so I know that teaching disciples is troublesome. Therefore, I don't have much time to waste on teaching disciples. Before you worship me as your master, I have a request. Please say it. Chen Zhizhong hurriedly said. He didn't expect that Tan Xiu had received several disciples at such a young age. If so, wouldn't he have several senior brothers in the future? No hurry, said Tan Xiu. I want to ask you a few questions first. If your answers satisfy me, then you will be my registered disciple from today onwards. If I'm not satisfied with your answer, go back to whence you came. Even what you see and hear here today must not be leaked. Chen Zhizhong's mind moved and he said, please ask. I will definitely answer truthfully. Tan Xiu pointed upwards and said, do you believe that there is always someone better out there? Is there a higher existence above our earth? Chen Zhizhong said, of course. The vast universe was boundless. Who knows how many civilizations there will be, how many brand new worlds. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, I'm not talking about this universe. I'm talking about space. Just like the world in those Xianxia stories, there was the human world, the demon world, the immortal world, and the divine world. Do you believe that these higher-level spaces exist? Chen Zhizhong pondered for a moment before slowly replying, I don't know. Tan Xiu asked, if there is, can you accept it? Chen Zhizhong nodded without hesitation. There are all sorts of strange things in the boundless universe. More broadly, the devil realm, the immortal realm, and the god realm were not out of the question. If there really is one, I can naturally accept it. Tan Xiu asked, next question. How much do you know about cultivators? Cultivators? Could it be? His mind turned quickly and he seriously said, cultivators are legendary figures in my eyes. What I know about them comes from fairy tales, and I've never encountered them in reality. However, I've heard of 2 places with such old immortals, but it's hard to say whether it's true or not. Where are they? Asked Tan Xiu. Qinghai and Xi. Chen Zhizhong replied. Tan Xiu nodded silently and said, if what I teach you won't make you achieve much, will you still want to worship me as your master? Chen Zhizhong said without hesitation, as long as I can practice martial arts and make progress, I'm willing to worship you as my master. Tan Xiu pointed to the door and said, I already know your answer. You can go now. Chen Zhizhong was stunned and instantly felt cold all over. He didn't understand what was wrong with his answer. Why did Tan Xiu refuse to accept him as a disciple? Can you tell me what I can't satisfy you? Tan Xiu said, my disciple doesn't need to practice martial arts. My disciple only needs to have a heart that is not afraid of danger and has the courage to fight against fate. Learning my cultivation method will always go against the heaven's will. A little carelessness will lead to eternal damnation. To put it plainly, the most important thing to learn from me is to cultivate the heart, followed by the cultivation of the body. Chen Zhizhong immediately knelt in front of Tan Xiu and firmly said, I have that heart. If I can make myself stronger, I'm willing to go against the heaven's will. Tan Xiu gazed deeply at him and watched his firm and resolute face. After a long silence, he nodded and said, go get some tea and then kowtow to me. All right, I'll go right away. Chen Zhizhong didn't react for a while. After he reacted, he immediately shouted with ecstasy. Serve the tea. Kowtow. The simplest ceremony of worshipping a master and disciple only took 2 minutes to complete. Tang Xiu motioned for Chen Zhizhong to sit on the opposite sofa, and then slowly said, anyhow, according to your age, your achievements in this life won't be too great even if you follow me to cultivate. It's very difficult for you to ascend to the heavens, and the chances of you becoming a supreme immortal are slim. However, since you've become my disciple, I'll naturally make you live longer and become stronger. Ascend to the heavens? The paragon of immortals? Chen Zhizhong's pupils violently contracted and his face was aghast. That's right, Tan Xiu said in a deep voice. I'm a cultivator, not someone who practices martial arts as you said. There are thousands of paths to the great Tao, but all of them lead to the same destination. I'll teach you immortal cultivation arts and guide you to step into the path of cultivation. As for how much you can achieve in the future, it's all up to your fortune. Fortune. It was indeed a great fortune. Chen Zhizhong was so excited that he wanted to shout out loud, but he didn't dare to act rashly in front of Tan Xiu. He had heard of cultivators, but he had never seen one. Such legendary figures were like towering mountains in his eyes, making him admire and yearn for them. Thank you, Master. This disciple will follow your teachings and cultivate seriously. Chen Zhizhong knelt in front of Tan Xiu again and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. Tan Xiu frowned and said with dissatisfaction, "You don't need to kowtow to me so easily in the future. I can't teach you much, so you can ask me when you encounter something you don't understand in your cultivation." Shortly after, Tan Xiu randomly picked a cultivation art and imparted it to Chen Zhizhong. The cultivation art he imparted might be mediocre in the eyes of those supreme immortals in the immortal world. But in the eyes of those ordinary immortals, it was no different from a legendary supreme divine art. Tan Xiu's present cultivation was too low to instill his spiritual sense, so he could only impart it bit by bit. It took him 4 hours to impart a cultivation art. Alright, I've imparted you the cultivation art. I'll teach you some other knowledge when you really embark on the path of cultivation, such as alchemy, refining, arrays, and so on. But remember, you can't be too hasty in your cultivation. Otherwise, it will lead to instability in your state of mind and lead to cultivation deviation. I'll follow your teachings, Master. Chen Zhizhong respectfully replied. Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "Alright, you can go now. Remember, you must never tell anyone about the cultivation art I'm imparting to you today. Including your closest relatives." Understood. Chen Zhizhong immediately nodded. After Tan Xiu sent Chen Zhizhong away, he picked up his mobile phone and looked at the time, only to find that there was an unread message on his mobile phone. After opening it, he remembered that Gong Dalong took his ID number during the day and said that he wanted to book a plane ticket. He didn't expect that he had already booked the plane ticket, and the departure time was tomorrow morning. I don't know how it feels to fly by plane. Is it like flying on a flying sword? After pondering for a moment, Tan Xiu felt a bit hungry and went to the kitchen. What made him smile wryly was that the clean and tidy kitchen was empty. Even the fridge was empty. This house doesn't have the taste of home at all. It's better to live with mother. Although the house is small, it has all the essentials and has the warmth of a home. After sighing with emotion, he was surprised to find that there was a menu on the wall behind the dining table. There were all kinds of dishes on it, and it was particularly sumptuous. After looking at it, he realized that the property management office left it for him. They were afraid that he didn't want to go out to eat and no one would cook for him, so they left a takeout menu. Sure enough, you get what you pay for. For this villa complex, the property management office is really considerate. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and called the number on the menu to order a takeout. 20 minutes later, the doorbell of the villa's courtyard rang. When Tan Xiu came outside, he found that the takeout had been delivered, and the person who delivered it was none other than Long Jinglin. "Why are you here?" asked Tan Xiu in surprise. "Big Bro Tang, I came especially to see you," said Long Jinglin with an excited face. "I just met the delivery man outside the door, so I gave him the money and sent him away. How come I feel that you're like a ghost that keeps haunting me?" Tan Xiu said with a helpless expression. "You're not enough to follow me during the day, yet you still come to sleep with me at night?" Long Jinglin shook his head vigorously. The excitement on his face didn't diminish. "Big Bro Tang, I'm looking for you for something else. Do you still remember the prescription you gave me this afternoon? I bought all the medicinal herbs according to the prescription and then went home to ask the housekeeper to boil it for me. I felt different after taking it. It just so happened that there was a girl who was interested in me, so I tried it. Guess what happened? It was simply a miracle. I persisted for a full 20 minutes. I didn't lie to you. I specifically looked at the time, and 20 minutes was definitely enough. Are you sick? Why are you telling me this kind of thing? Tan Xiu was at a loss whether he had to laugh or cry as he cursed. Long Zhenglin shook his head again and said, "Big bro, I saw a strong business opportunity in that prescription. So, I pulled up my pants and hurriedly came to discuss with you about making a fortune." Business opportunity. Chapter 77. Tan Xiu looked at the excited Long Zhenglin in front of him with a puzzled expression. He really didn't understand how a prescription for invigorating the kidney and strengthening yang energy could contain such a huge business opportunity. "Tell me about it." Tan Xiu sobered up from his daze after a long while and said with great interest. Long Zhenglin pulled Tan Xiu to the living room on the first floor of the villa. After putting the takeout food on the table, he skillfully took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it up. After taking a deep puff, he began to spit out a lot of saliva. "Eldest brother, you're sitting on a treasure mountain, but you don't know it. The effect of the prescription you gave me is unexpectedly good. Just think about it, how many men in the world are troubled by the matter of? How many of them are unable to harmonize with their husband's life, causing their families to be unable to live in harmony? How many women are unable to satisfy their men and end up having an affair? There's an organization that has investigated this issue. According to the statistics of the survey, 75% of men in the world are unable to satisfy their partners. 37% of them can't last for more than 10 minutes. 8% of them are quick shooters and can't last for more than 5 minutes. This survey may not be very rigorous, but the organization has spent 4 years to investigate more than 100,000 adults all over the world and finally came to this conclusion. Long Zhenglin wiped his mouth and excitedly said again, "There's no man in the world who doesn't want to show off his masculinity in bed and kill his partner. None, absolutely none. Even homosexuals want to have the image of an Iron Man deeply implanted in their partner's heart." "What do you mean?" Tan Xiu seemed to realize something as he probingly asked. Long Zhenglin said aloud, "Nowadays, the aphrodisiac drugs sold on the market indeed have the effect of restoring a man's masculinity. But those drugs have great side effects on the body. Many people are unwilling to buy those drugs even if they have to bear the title of incompetent. But the medicine you gave me is different. On one hand, it can nourish the kidney and treat kidney deficiency, on the other hand, it can restore a man's masculinity. This is absolutely a divine tool for making money." Tan Xiu quickly said, "This medicine not only has the effect of invigorating the kidney and strengthening yang energy, but it also has great nourishing benefits for women. It even has a little cosmetic effect." Heavens! Long Zhenglin directly jumped up from the sofa, his eyes were bigger than a copper bell. After a while, an angry expression suddenly appeared on his face. He looked at Tan Xiu and roared, "Boss, you're wasting God's gift recklessly. Why? Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? Why didn't you give me this prescription earlier?" Tan Xiu rolled his eyes at him and said angrily, "How long have I known you?" "Ugh." Long Zhenglin's breathing stagnated, and the anger on his face immediately vanished. With some awkwardness, he smiled and said, Yes. It's all my fault for knowing you too late. If I had known you earlier, I'm afraid I would have fallen for you long ago." Tan Xiu laughed and scolded, "Don't talk nonsense. You came all the way here to find me, I believe you must have the idea of using this prescription to make money. Tell me, I'll see if I can help you." Long Zhenglin immediately said, "Eldest brother, do you have any way to make the medicinal soup taste better? For example, those drinks, sweet and creamy." Tan Xiu's eyes lit up, and his heart suddenly palpitated. Although he was not very familiar with the domestic beverage market, he could fully imagine how huge it was. He had heard that several beverages or dairy products occupied half of the market share, and its big bosses had successfully squeezed into the ranks of the country's super rich and powerful. If this kind of product that could be compared to medicine and could also be used as a beverage was pushed to the market, once it exploded in the whole country, what kind of sales share would it have? How amazing would the profits be? If it could be promoted to the whole world, then, Tan Xiu stared deeply at Long Jinglin as all kinds of thoughts constantly churned inside his mind. After being silent for a long time, he slowly said, "Your suggestion is very good, very good. As long as the promotion channel is perfect, I'm afraid it will cause a huge sensation once the product hits the market, and the profits will also be very terrifying. Long Jinglin, how do you plan to cooperate with me?" Long Jinglin probed, "I want some shares, and the management rights will be handled by your people, eldest brother." Tan Xiu didn't answer him, but asked, "I want to know, how much ability have you learned in the Long Group all these years? If you were asked to control a huge business group, would you be able to do it?" Long Jinglin's expression froze. With a bit of embarrassment, he shook his head and said, "I can't. Even if it's an ordinary company, it'll be very difficult for me to manage it. If it were my big brother, he could control a small company. But a super large company would be very difficult even for my big brother. Such being the case, I'll hand over the management of the company to someone else," said Tan Xiu. "But I can let you invest in it, and if you want, you can also participate in the management of the company. May I know how much you're going to invest in the early stage?" "I can ask my dad for money," Long Jinglin quickly said. "As for the shares, I'll be satisfied if you give me 5%. As for management, I'm not good at it. At most, I can help with the odd jobs." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "Don't look for your dad. How much can you get if you invest your own money?" Long Jinglin said with an awkward expression, "I'm quite poor, so it's not a problem for me to take out a few million. But if it's more, I'm afraid I'll have to sell my private property and luxury cars. If I sell them all, I should be able to get 20 to 30 million. You invest 3 million, and I'll give you 10% of the shares," said Tan Xiu. "But you must not easily spread the fact that I'm the boss of the company." Long Jinglin curiously asked, "Can I say it if my dad and brother ask?" "Up to you," Tan Xiu calmly said. Long Jinglin rubbed his hands and said with a smile, "All right, I got it. It seems like I don't need to ask about the food and drinks if I follow Big Bro. Big Bro, I've decided to follow you in this life. Even if you want to dump me, I won't do it. Fuck off." Tan Xiu cursed with a smile. Shortly after, Tan Xiu drove Long Jinglin away. When the villa was quiet, he began to think about the new product's formula in his mind. He needed to ensure the new product's quality while also making it taste good. How could he check the formula of the other drinks? Tan Xiu was a bit tangled inside. After thinking about it, he decided to ask someone and immediately dialed Kang Xia's cell number. "What's up, Tan Xiu?" Kang Xia's sleepy voice came out of the phone. Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment. He looked at the time and suddenly woke up. Suddenly, an awkward expression appeared on his face. After all, it was almost 2 o'clock in the night. "Sorry, I forgot that it's time to sleep now. I'm looking for you because there's something I want to consult you about." "What is it?" Tan Xiu asked. "You're very experienced in running a business. What I want to ask is, if I want to know the formula of the other drinks, what do I need to do?" "Find Miss Du," Kang Xia said snappily. "Who's Miss Du? Does she know the formula of those drinks?" Tan Xiu's eyes were filled with deep confusion as he couldn't help but ask. Kang Xia quivered. She was at a loss whether she had to laugh or cry as her voice came out again. "Come on, are you still a good youth from the New World? You don't even know who Miss Du is? Baidu. You can search on Baidu and you'll be clear about it. However, the formulas on the internet, as well as the formulas on the product bottles, were not very complete. After all, the formula of any product is a trade secret of the owner." Tan Xiu said, "It doesn't matter. I got it. Thank you." Kang Xia asked, "Do you want to do a beverage business?" Tan Xiu didn't conceal it as he said, "I do have such an idea. But I don't have the formula yet, so I want to study it." Kang Xia was speechless. She couldn't help but mutter inside, "Do you think it's that easy to study the formula? If it's that easy, there would have been countless drinks in the world. Suddenly, she recalled the 2 cosmetic formulas Tan Xiao gave her. She couldn't help but think, could it be that he also came up with those 2 cosmetic formulas randomly? In an instant, Kang Xia's heart sank. Tan Xiao didn't know that his phone call had turned Kang Xia's mood into a mess, to the point that she couldn't sleep all night. He hung up the phone and was ready to search for other beverage formulas on the internet. But he was dumbfounded as he remembered that he didn't have a computer. Even his mobile phone didn't have internet connection. Forget it. Haste makes waste. I'll buy a computer when I have time. It won't be too late to search when I have internet. Tan Xiao shook his head. He put away all his thoughts and prepared to sleep. After all, he had to follow Gong Dalong to Jingmen Island tomorrow, so he must have enough energy. Jingmen Island was a large isolated island in the Southern Sea. After decades of development, it had now become a bustling international metropolis and an important transportation hub in Southeast Asia. The flourishing tourism industry had driven the economy of the entire Jingmen Island to advance by leaps and bounds. Jingmen Island Airport. Jia Yele was restlessly standing at the airport's exit. His eyes were constantly looking at the passengers coming out. At the same time, there was deep regret in his heart. But at the same time, he also hoped that his eldest senior brother could invite the gambling grandmaster that his father had praised. At this moment, he knew that his father was gambling with those bastards who cheated him. Perhaps, his father's lost capital would increase if he was a minute late. If that grandmaster can't do it, I'm afraid we'll never be able to make a comeback in this lifetime. His heart was full of bitterness. Yele! A shout came from the corner behind the stream of people. Jia Yele looked toward the source of the voice. A pleasantly surprised expression suddenly appeared on his face. He quickly walked to greet him. Eldest senior brother, you're finally back. Where's that gambling grandmaster? Chapter 78. Tan Xiao, who was standing next to Gong Dalong, could see that Jia Yele's eyes only glanced at him and then looked around to find the gambling grandmaster. A bit of coldness arose in his heart. In particular, his words made Tan Xiao a bit dissatisfied. This Jia Yele in front of him actually judged people by their appearance. Tan Xiao finally understood why he was tricked by others. He had countless ways to trick such a person. Gong Dalong also saw through Jia Yele's thoughts. He slapped his head and snappily said, "He's Grandmaster Tang, the gambling grandmaster I specially invited." Jia Yele rubbed his head as his vision fell on Tan Xiao. With just a glance, he called out in disbelief, "Eldest senior brother, are you kidding me? Him? He's so young and he doesn't even look older than me, no? How can he be more powerful than my dad? How could he be a gambling grandmaster? Idiot!" Tan Xiao secretly cursed inside. He was completely speechless toward Jia Yele. Gong Dalong was infuriated by Jia Yele. If it wasn't because he was in front of Tang Xiao, he really wanted to slap this idiot junior brother to death. The first time he saw Tan Xiao, he indeed had contempt in his heart. After all, the impression Tan Xiao gave him was, too young. However, in the contest between Tan Xiao and Su Shangguan, although he had helped Tan Xiao, he didn't play much of a role. But Long Hanwen and Chen Zhizhong, the two rich and powerful people of Star City, had stood up to help Tan Xiao. It seemed that they intended to express their goodwill to Tan Xiao. This made him suddenly wake up and understand the truth that one couldn't judge a book by its cover. Gong Dalong glanced at the indifferent expression on Tan Xiao's face. He then pulled Jia Yele out of the crowd and came to a remote place tens of meters away. Without hesitation, he fiercely slapped Jia Yele's face and angrily glared at him and said, "Remember me. Judging a book by its cover is a taboo for professional gamblers like us." Master Tang won Master at the gambling table. Do you think Master would lie to you? If Master Tang didn't have the ability, do you think Master would treat him as a life-saving straw? You're not doubting Master Tang, you're doubting your father. Jia Yele covered his burning cheeks and looked at Tan Xiu, who had followed him here. He immediately broke out in a cold sweat. How could he not know that he had committed the biggest taboo of professional gamblers? How could he not know that he had judged people by their appearance? With a bit of regret, he looked at Tan Xiu and bowed deeply, saying, "Grandmaster Tang, I was rude just now. Please be magnanimous and don't let me lower myself to the same level as this person who has no foresight. I'm sorry, I hope you can forgive me." Tan Xiu was originally very unhappy with Jia Yele, but seeing him admit his mistake so easily and even apologize straightforwardly with a tone and expression full of sincerity, Tan Xiu had a whole new level of respect for him. As the saying goes, there is nothing more virtuous than being able to correct one's mistakes. Although Jia Yele had some flaws in his character, he could be regarded as someone who could be taught. "What about your father?" Tan Xiu nodded slightly and calmly asked. Jia Yele carefully took the suitcase from Tan Xiu's hand and hurriedly said, "My father is at the gambling table. Since today is the deadline set by the other party, he must continue to gamble with them. Otherwise, my mother's relic will be sold off by them." Tan Xiu secretly shook his head. It seemed that this Jia Ruidao had sunk deep into the pit. It was said that when beating a snake, one should hit the weak spot. Others had seized Jia Ruidao's weak spot, so he had no choice but to succumb. Rhythm. Tan Xiu was very clear about the meaning of this word, especially the word rhythm. He knew what it meant to gamblers. If a professional gambler could control the rhythm of the entire game, he would undoubtedly win big. On the contrary, once he lost the control of this rhythm, it would be extremely difficult for him to win. Jingmen Island, Paradise Club. All the regulars in Jingmen Island, as long as they were keen gamblers, there was no one who didn't know them. It was not in a building, but inside a luxury cruise ship at Jingmen Island's port. Rumor had it that the big boss behind the scenes of the Paradise Club was Ouyang Lulu, the eldest daughter of Jingmen Island's first family, the Ouyang family. Of course, this was an illegal business, so she had distributed a lot of shares. Otherwise, without a safe haven, it would be difficult for those jealous people to get rid of it. At this moment, in a spacious and bright office inside the Paradise Club's luxury cruise ship, Ouyang Lulu warmly entertained her two classmates from the capital. De Hong Pao, produced in Wui Mountain, is a type of oolong tea with excellent quality. It's a special famous tea in the country. Its shape is tight, and it has a greenish-brown color. After brewing, it will have a bright orange color with red and green leaves. The most outstanding quality of this tea is its fragrant orchid fragrance. The fragrance lasts for a long time, and the rock charm is obvious. Its efficacy is innumerable. A smile hung on the corner of Bai Tao's mouth as he watched Ouyang Lulu elegantly carrying out the tea-making process. Then, he continued, "This top-grade De Hong Pao is something that's hard to find even with 1,000 gold coins. My uncle once spent a lot of effort to buy a few batches from some big tea merchants in the southern province. It seems that classmate Ouyang is very capable. You can even get your hands on this top-grade tea." Ouyang Lulu said with a smile, "I say, old classmate, is it interesting to tease me? But, I didn't expect you to be so proficient in the tea ceremony. I'd like to consult you when I have time later." Bai Tao was startled. He quickly waved his hand and forced a smile. "I was just showing off my slight skill in front of Lu Ban. Please don't consult me. If you really want to consult, you can consult others. I know someone's tea ceremony skill is very powerful. Even what I know is imperceptibly influenced by what I've seen and heard." "Who is it?" asked Ouyang Lulu with a puzzled expression. Bai Tao glanced at Chu Yi and chuckled, "Far away on the horizon, but close at hand." Ouyang Lulu was exceptionally smart. She immediately turned to look at Chu Yi and said with an astonished expression, "Chu Yi, it turns out that the tea ceremony expert is you. What's wrong? You're still playing low-key in front of your old classmate." Chu Yi couldn't help laughing. "I used to think that my tea ceremony skill was an expert among my peers. But after seeing your tea-making skills, I'm sincerely convinced. There's always someone better than you out there. Classmate Ouyang, you've given me a good lesson today. Ouyang Lulu said with a charming smile, modesty makes people fat. I reckon that you'll become a big fatty in a short time. Ah, that's right, are you two very free recently? How did you come to Jingmen Island? Originally, we went to Star City to find that Long Zhengyu brat. We made an appointment to go to Thailand to play together. But I didn't expect that brat to change his mind at the last minute and give up the opportunity to go out for a big project. Ouyang Lulu said with a smile, although I've never seen Long Zhengyu, I've heard his name many times. Especially the two of you. Every time you meet, you always mention him in my ear. It seems that I must see this famous young Master Long if I have the opportunity later. I want to see what kind of outstanding person he is, to be worthy of such a deep friendship between the two of you. Bai Tao said with a smile, of course he's amazing. He's not much worse than us. Ouyang Lulu couldn't help laughing, are you praising him? Or are you praising the two of you? Chu Yi's expression suddenly moved as he said, Lulu, Long Zhengyu is really outstanding. Among the younger generation, there are only a few talented youths who are more powerful than him. However, our trip to Star City this time turned out to be even more interesting. To be exact, it's a more interesting person. Who is it? Ouyang Lulu asked in surprise. Chu Yi said, I don't know the specifics, but I know that he's a young man. The most inconceivable thing is that he's actually a high school student. You can't imagine that it's that high school student who helped Long Zhengyu win a big project. Even the incomparably arrogant Long Zhengyu actually worships that high school student. Ouyang Lulu said with surprise, Long Zhengyu actually worships a high school student? Are you kidding me? Bai Tao said, we're absolutely not kidding. I can really feel that Long Zhengyu really worships him. When we were chatting and drinking tea with Long Zhengyu, that young man called Tang Xiu called Long Zhengyu and asked him to help him find a professional manager. Long Zhengyu's attitude was simply, even more intimate than when he was treating his biological brother. Ouyang Lulu was confused, why would a high school student want to find a professional manager? Bai Tao said, he said that he's preparing to set up a company, but he doesn't have the time to manage it, so he asked Long Zhengyu to help him find a professional manager. You don't know, but we happened to be there at that time, so Chu Yi gave him a rotten idea. He asked Tan Xiu to invite Kang Xia. Old classmate, have you heard of Kang Xia's name? TSK, TSK. I really want to see if that kid can invite Kang Xia. Ouyang Lulu rolled her eyes and scolded with a smile, you two are really not good things. Who is Kang Xia? She's a super elite from the world's financial center, Wall Street. Countless big shots in the business world want to take her as their subordinate. After countless efforts, all of them failed. And you want a high school student to invite her? Isn't this an international joke? Bai Tao chuckled and said, hee hee, it's just for fun. Chu Yi's expression suddenly moved. He grabbed his mobile and dialed a number. After the other party picked up, he asked, is there any news about the information I asked you to investigate? Yesterday, Kang Xia went to Star City alone. Her purpose is unknown. What? Chu Yi suddenly felt that there was something wrong with his ears. Kang Xia went to Star City. What did she go to Star City for? Suddenly, there was an indescribable complex emotion in Chu Yi's heart. It was like a surging wave, rolling endlessly inside his heart. Ouyang Lulu looked at Chu Yi's strange expression and asked curiously, what's going on? Chu Yi hung up the phone and looked at the four people's gazes, saying, I was curious, so I sent someone to investigate Kang Xia's whereabouts. I just got the answer that Kang Xia went to Star City yesterday. Her purpose is unknown. She went to Star City. Bai Tao directly jumped up from the sofa and exclaimed in disbelief, Kang Xia went to Star City because of that Tan Xiu? How is this possible? Chapter 79. Tan Xiu. This name was deeply engraved in Ouyang Lulu's heart. She was very clear about the importance of a person that Chu Yi and Bai Tao had in mind. Not to mention that this person was worshipped by Long Zhengyu, so he absolutely must not be underestimated. Furthermore, if the legendary gold manager Kang Xia really went to Star City alone for him, then he was really amazing. Of course, regardless of whether Kang Xia would work for him or not, as long as Kang Xia personally went there, his means were already heaven-defying. I seem to be more interested in this Tan Xiu than Long Zhengyu. Ouyang Lulu smiled as she handed the brewed tea to the two of them. Bai Tao suppressed the shock in his heart as he took the tea and said, I have the same feeling. That Chu Yi really aroused my interest. If he's really amazing, I don't mind having another friend. Chu Yi shook his head and said, I'm afraid it's not easy to become Tan Xiu's friend. If I'm not mistaken, Long Zhengyu and Tan Xiu are not real friends when we were in Star City. Even if Long Zhengyu gave him a villa and spared no effort to help him. There are some people in this world who can easily become friends without any conflicts of interest. But once they are mixed with interests, wanting to become real friends is as difficult as ascending to the blue sky. Ouyang Lulu let out a shallow smile and said, forget it. Let's not talk about this. You two came to Jingmen Island, don't tell me that you want to talk about old times with this old classmate of yours. Tell me, what's so fun about it? I can join in. Bai Tao and Chu Yi glanced at each other. Then, Chu Yi chuckled and said, I got a call 2 days ago. One of my little brother's men recently became a banker in Jingmen Island and cheated a kid. As a result, the young one was beaten and the old one came forward. Because of this, my little brother won a jade pendant of extremely high quality from the old man. You also know that I'm very interested in jades and jadeite business, so I came here to have a look. Ouyang Lulu said with a smile, I know about this. The one who got cheated is called Jia Ruidao. He used to be a famous professional gambler, and could barely be considered a master. Unfortunately, this time he met a difficult opponent, one of the top 3 golden fingers in Macau, Yi Taifu. Not only did he lose all his money, but he also borrowed hundreds of millions of yuan from his old friends. I reckon that he's about to lose everything again. Chu Yi said with a smile, I have no interest in gambling. But I'm interested in that jade pendant. Ouyang Lulu looked at the time and said, they happen to be gambling today. Do you want to go and have a look? Oh, right. Since you are here, you should know that the bet between Yi Taifu and Jia Ruidao is going to take place in our Paradise Club, right? Bang bang, someone knocked on the door, and a middle-aged man walked into the room. What is it? Ouyang Lulu casually asked. The middle-aged man said, Boss, the next bet is between Yi Taifu and Jia Ruidao. Jia Ruidao suddenly called a halt and left our Paradise Club. He said that the bet will be rescheduled to tomorrow. Ouyang Lulu's brows pricked as she looked at Chu Yi and said with a smile, it seems that you won't be able to see it today. Let's go. I'll treat you to dinner tonight. All right. Chu Yi and Bai Tao didn't care about the bet, so they weren't disappointed. Jingmen Island. Outside the Jarvis 5-star hotel's entrance, Jia Ruidao's face was full of excitement. His eyes were constantly looking at the street in the distance. Next to him, his second disciple, Zhang Taichun, also had a face full of expectation. Their savior would arrive soon. They were very clear that the upcoming arrival of their benefactor would be their last life-saving straw. Master Tang should be arriving soon, right? Zhang Taichun raised his wrist and looked at his watch. Jia Ruidao said, yes. He should have arrived by now. Could it be that there was an accident on the road? Zhang Tiechuan's eyes narrowed as he pointed to the street and asked, Master, that should be the car, right? Jia Ruidao looked at his second disciple's arm and suddenly said with a pleasantly surprised expression, yes, that's your junior brother's car. He should be coming back. The car stopped. Jia Ruidao sprinted to the car and opened the door. Brother Tang. The moment Jia Ruidao saw Tan Xiu, he excitedly called out. However, his address made his 3 disciples look at each other in dismay as they blushed with shame. After all, even the youngest among them, Jia Yele, was 5 or 6 years older than Tan Xiu. This address directly lowered their seniority. Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Weren't you gambling on the table? Why did you come back?" Jia Ruidao said with a bitter expression, "I lost almost all my money. I must leave some money for you to gamble with the other party tomorrow. So, I called for a halt midway and hurried back." Tan Xiu said, "Let's go. Let's go inside." In the presidential suite on the top floor of the Jarvis Hotel, Tan Xiu and Jia Ruidao sat on the sofa in the hall while Jia Ruidao's 3 disciples stood behind him. Every time Jia Yele's eyes swept over his father, a trace of fear could be seen on his face. "Brother Tang, I can't thank you enough for your kindness. You came from thousands of miles away to help me. I, Jia Ruidao, will always remember this gratitude in my heart. If you need me in the future, even if it's a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, I, Jia Ruidao, will never frown." Jia Ruidao said with a sincere expression. Tan Xiu said, "Give me the opponent's information." Jia Ruidao immediately nodded to his second disciple, Zhang Taichun. A moment later, the information was handed over to Tan Xiu. While Tan Xiu was reading the information, Jia Ruidao said, "Our opponent is called Chen Kai, a famous playboy in Jingmen Island. This time, he invited Yi Taifu with a huge sum of money. Not only my disciples, but I also lost a lot of games. Yi Taifu is one of the top 3 gambling masters in Macau. He's also a famous cheat. I thought that even if I'm not stronger than him, I'm not much worse than him, but, alas." While listening to Jia Ruidao's narration, Tan Xiu looked at the information in his hands. 10 minutes later, he knew the whole thing like the back of his hand. He also had a general understanding of the opponent's situation. A very difficult master to deal with. Tan Xiu secretly sighed inside his heart. He looked at Jia Ruidao and said, "I can help you gamble with the opponent, but I have a condition." Jia Ruidao said, "Please say it." Tan Xiu said, "First of all, I want to make it clear that I don't know how to gamble. I think you're clear about this. After all, when we were gambling, I secretly learned your skills. If I really lose, you can't blame me." Jia Ruidao seriously said, "I absolutely won't." Tan Xiu said, "If I win, I don't care about your capital, but I want half of all the money I win." Jia Ruidao said without hesitation, "I only want my wife's belongings. All the other money is yours." Tan Xiu shook his head. "I said, I only want half." Jia Ruidao hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Tan Xiu didn't seem to be lying, he nodded and said, "I agree." Tan Xiu looked at Jia Ruidao's 3 apprentices and immediately said, "My condition is finished. You also know that I don't know anything about gambling. Apart from dice, I don't know anything about other types of gambling. So today, you need to explain all types of gambling to me, and also teach me those skills." "All right." Jia Ruidao also had this intention, so he happily agreed. Immediately, Jia Ruidao ordered his 3 apprentices to find a variety of gambling tools. There were many types of gambling. Jia Ruidao focused on teaching Tan Xiu, dice, 5-card stud, pai gao, mahjong, blackjack, golden flower. You can play dice, and it's very good. I won't teach you this one. Now, the first thing I'll teach you is blackjack. This gambling method is also the most common gambling method. I've been gambling with Yi Taifu for the past few days, and almost all of them are blackjack. Generally, blackjack is used from 1 to 8 cards. The dealer will give 2 cards to each player. One card is facing up, which is called the name card, and the other is facing down, which is called the dark card. In total, it will be dealt. Ordinary gamblers may only rely on luck to win or lose. But a real master gambler completely relies on a variety of skills. To put it bluntly, those skills are almost all a smokescreen, used to deceive people. As the saying goes, 9 out of 10 gambles are deceiving people. Jia Ruidao explained while demonstrating to Tan Xiu. Along with the constant changes of his hands, the skillful shuffling of the cards with lightning speed, made Tan Xiu secretly exclaim in admiration, 360 professions, each profession has its own master. If one's gambling skill can be practiced to the acme of perfection, one can absolutely make a fortune. Of course, the premise is that one must have the opportunity to win money, and have the life to spend it. The second is 5-card stud, the third is pai gao, the fourth is, time passed bit by bit, and in the blink of an eye, it was already evening. Jia Ruidao and Tan Xiu didn't eat, they even forgot the feeling of hunger. Between the two of them, one was enjoying teaching, and the other one was enjoying learning to his heart's content. Even at night, they didn't pay attention. The last one is Golden Flower. Jia Ruidao grabbed a new deck of playing cards. After drawing out the Joker and Joker, he looked at Tan Xiu and said, "This way of playing." Tan Xiu waved his hand to interrupt him and said, "I know how to play this game because I've seen others play it. You just need to tell me the technique of Golden Flower." Jia Ruidao knew that Tan Xiu was formidable. He had seen it before, and today, it was an eye-opener for him. He taught Tan Xiu the gambling skill, and Tan Xiu quickly learned it. Even his proficiency in it also improved at lightning speed. Therefore, he didn't have the slightest anger toward Tan Xiu for interrupting him. Instead, he was secretly happy. There are two main aspects to pay attention to when playing Golden Flower. First, deception. To quote from The Art of War, the art of deception. Playing is actually a psychological game. Some people get small cards, but they can rely on the deception to win big. Some people get big cards, but they are afraid that the other side will get bigger, so they give up. Second, secretly take pictures and change cards. A lot of powerful experts have hidden cards on their bodies. This kind of hidden card can't be found by others, but it depends on the other party's ability to hide it. The other one is hand speed. In gambling, hand speed plays a crucial role. For example, this Golden Flower. Chapter 80. Jia Ruidao skillfully shuffled the cards and then gave 3 dark cards to Tan Xiu and himself. Then, he put the rest of the cards aside and continued. After the dealer has finished dealing the cards, he will put the cards on the table in front of him. I once heard of an expert who could use the cards in his hand to shoot out and hit the remaining cards in the deck. With a very fast speed, he would hit out the cards he needed, and his original cards would be left in the remaining cards. However, a gambler who can do this is definitely a god of gamblers. For example, there is such a god of gamblers in the Las Vegas casino. Suddenly, Jia Ruidao patted his forehead and said in annoyance, "I forgot a crucial factor. That is, memorizing and calculating the cards. Your eyes must always stare at the dealer's hand and follow his rhythm. You must remember and calculate the position of each card. Especially when you cut the cards, you must be accurate." Tan Xiu followed Jia Ruidao's explanation and touched his 3 cards. When he saw the numbers on the cards, his brows suddenly wrinkled. His eyes swept over the remaining cards that Jia Ruidao had just put down. His hand moved as fast as lightning, and in an instant, he had already finished changing the cards. Even smaller. Tan Xiu secretly sighed inside. He realized that he didn't carefully look at the cards that Jia Ruidao shuffled. He also didn't remember each card's face and position. Seeing that Jia Ruidao didn't notice him changing the cards, he immediately clamped a card and changed it again. 4 of spades, 5 of hearts, 6 of hearts, straight. Tan Xiu flipped the cards and said, "It's your turn." Jia Ruidao said with a smile, "My luck is good." "Mine." As he spoke, his hand quickly swept the remaining cards in front of him. But almost in an instant, Tan Xiu quickly and accurately grabbed his wrist. As for the card that Jia Ruidao was holding in his hand, he did not exchange it. "Don't play with your hand speed in front of me." Jia Ruidao's expression turned dumbfounded. He looked at Tan Xiu's hand in disbelief, and the corner of his mouth twitched a few times. He smiled bitterly and said, "It's really hard to believe. How can your eyes be so sharp?" How can your hand be so fast? My hand's speed was fast, partly because of my talent, and partly because of my decades of practice. But you? Tan Xiu lightly said, I practice martial arts, so I need to be observant and alert. My punches are as fast as lightning, and my palms are as fast as light. Unless it's someone who's faster than me, I'll easily find out if they cheat in front of me. Jia Ruidao was overjoyed and said, That's great. I really didn't expect that Brother Tang is a martial artist. After today's lesson, my worried heart can finally be at ease. To be honest, it's a great loss for the gambling industry that you're not a professional gambler, Brother Tang. I feel that if you can focus on practicing your gambling skills, you can become a famous gambling master in at most 3 to 5 years. Gambling Grandmaster. Tan Xiu secretly rolled his eyes inside. He had nothing better to do, so he became a gambling grandmaster. Not to mention that he didn't have the slightest interest in gambling, he needed to cultivate and enhance his strength to return to the peak of the immortal world. He couldn't wait to race against time, so he didn't have the time to waste. Grumble, suddenly, a sound came from Jia Ruidao's stomach. Tan Xiu smiled indifferently and said, It's very late now. Let's go out and eat something first. I've already memorized all the gambling techniques you taught me. I'll practice them again tonight. Jia Ruidao had exhausted his mind and spirit on the gambling table during the day, so he was in a tense state. After he came back, he taught Tan Xiu gambling techniques. Seeing Tan Xiu's extraordinary talent that could easily accept and learn almost every gambling method, Jia Ruidao was overjoyed. His mood changed from great sorrow to great joy, causing him to feel a burst of exhaustion at this moment. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, he naturally raised his hands in agreement. Brother Tang, my disciples should have booked a private box. Let's go now. After leaving the presidential suite, Jia Ruidao's eldest disciple, Gong Dalong, was waiting outside the door. Upon seeing the two of them coming out, he immediately respectfully said, Master, Grandmaster Tang, I've booked a private box in the Everlasting Feast Hall. Second junior brother and little junior brother are already waiting there. Good. Jia Ruidao nodded in satisfaction. He looked at Tan Xiu and quickly said, Brother Tang, the Everlasting Feast Hall is Jingmen Island's specialty restaurant. It's a very high-class place. If you're not a member, you simply can't enter the door. Yeah. Tan Xiu nodded. He didn't have a favorable impression toward those restaurants and clubs in the country that easily required one's status and title. It was because the slogan of this new era was, Everyone is equal and build a harmonious society together. However, to set up such a threshold was to divide people into 3, 6, or 9 ranks. If it was in the world of immortal cultivation, Tan Xiu might have been accustomed to it. But in this new era, it made him feel like he was building a monument to his chastity. Sitting in the Mercedes-Benz, passing through the bustling city, the car changed direction on a small road near the coastline. On the 2-lane road in the lush forest, apart from the dim yellow streetlights, there was hardly a single car in sight. Occasionally, a few security guards on sensor cars would pass by them silently. Gradually, the sound of the waves seemed to come from the sky, and as the car moved forward, the sound became clearer and clearer. Finally, lights that looked like twinkling stars appeared in front of Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu looked at the lights and was shocked. He cried out involuntarily, Water block dragon lock array. Jia Ruidao was confused and asked, Brother Tang, what did you say? Tan Xiu took a deep breath, trying to calm his breathing. He turned to look at Jia Ruidao and asked, Is this the Everlasting Feast Hall? How much do you know about this restaurant? Jia Ruidao shook his head and said, Very few. The owner of this restaurant is definitely a mysterious dragon whose head and tail are hard to be seen. Legend has it that the Everlasting Feast Hall has existed since the beginning of Jingmen Island's development. Only, its scale has continued to expand. That's right, there's also a special case. What special case? Tan Xiu asked. Jia Ruidao lowered his voice and said, "You can dine in this everlasting feast hall. Even if it's a sky-high price, the food here is absolutely delicious. The wine here is a bejeweled nectar that makes people salivate. Those who come here, aside from those with money and status, there is another kind of people who can enter. That is, martial arts practitioners." Martial arts practitioners? Tan Xiao was confused by Jia Ruidao's words. Jia Ruidao explained, "Yes, they are martial arts practitioners. The most puzzling thing is that every martial arts practitioner who comes here can eat and drink for free as long as they can pass through the 1000 revolution array set up by the restaurant owner." 1000 revolution array. Tan Xiao's heart shook violently as his complexion instantly turned pale. His mind couldn't help but recall the days in the immortal world. He recalled the martial arts field in the towering palace, and the figure of the little girl in white fluttering in the wind. In the dark, that young and tender voice lingered in his ears. "Master, Yen has tried to break through the 1000 revolution array 3600 times, how come she still can't break through? Did you act shamelessly and set up the little golden man in the Kun position?" "Master, Yen has finally broken through. I'm very happy. You said that I've grown up after breaking through the 1000 revolution array. Has Yen grown up?" "Master, Yen has personally brewed this 100 flowers pure wine. Please have a taste, Master." Tan Xiao's eyes were filled with a glimmer of sparkling and translucent light. 6,500 years. It had been 6,500 years. His favorite disciple, the one who helped him find the 10,000-year ice soul, had rushed alone into the Dead Sea of Netherworld. Since then, there had been no news of her. He had been sad for 6,500 years, and vowed that he would never accept a personal disciple again. Impossible. Even though I only taught her the 1000 revolution array. Even though the water block dragon array is my own creation, and I only taught it to her. But this should only be a coincidence, a coincidence. Tan Xiao kept repeating this sentence in his heart. Soon, the Mercedes-Benz car was parked in the spacious parking lot. Jia Yele, who had been waiting for a long time, stepped forward and opened the door. He then looked at Tan Xiao and his father coming out. "Dad, Grandmaster Tang, the box has been booked. We're just waiting for you." Jia Ruidao slowly nodded. He looked at Tan Xiao and said, "Grandmaster Tang, let's go together." Tan Xiao was silent for a moment and then said, "Tell me the box number. I'm a bit bored and want to go out for a walk. Wait for me to get some fresh air. I'll go to the box to find you." This, Jia Ruidao hesitated. Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, "Just go. I'll be fine." Jia Ruidao nodded and said, "If that's the case, then we'll go in first. Brother Tang, if there's anything, just call me first." "All right." Tan Xiao nodded without a word. After sending off Jia Ruidao and his disciple, Tan Xiao identified the direction. He passed through the forest trail, bypassed the fountain square, and went straight to the coastline. The starlight filled the sky, illuminating the sparkling sea surface. Thousands of meters away from the coastline, a lone boat was drifting along with the waves. Tan Xiao's eyes were sharp. He could clearly see that there was a thin figure inside the lone boat. Looking at it, there was a thick sense of desolation and loneliness. Tan Xiao took a deep breath and sat cross-legged on the beach. The Great Tao is 1,000 trials and tribulations, cutting through thistles and thorns. The heavens do not move, my heart is tranquil. Myriad sects return to the heart. The great sorrow and great joy clear heart incantation surged in Tan Xiao's heart. The heaven and earth spiritual chi from all directions roared and rushed over, as though a clear spring was washing his rippling heart. 10 minutes later, on the lone boat a kilometer away, the countenance of the gorgeous girl sitting cross-legged suddenly changed. A surprised look flashed in her starry eyes as she quickly turned her head to look at the coastline. She was keenly aware that the heaven and earth spiritual chi around her was unexpectedly rushing toward the figure sitting cross-legged on the shore. Chapter 81. Under the starry night sky, the alluring young lady floated up on the sparkling surface of the sea like a fairy from the 9 heavens. She tapped the surface of the sea with the tip of her foot and walked on the waves, hurrying toward the figure sitting cross-legged on the shoreline. A dozen breaths later, the gorgeous girl had already walked a kilometer away from Tan Xiu. She stopped a dozen meters away from Tang Xiu. Her pair of bright eyes carefully sized up Tang Xiu a few times, and then carefully took out a painting from her bosom. After comparing it with Tang Xiu, she shook her head with slight disappointment, folded the painting, and put it back into her bosom. Huh? Tang Xiu's eyes opened in an instant as his callous eyes instantly stared at the alluring girl. He found that this girl, who looked to be in her 20s, had a much stronger cultivation than him, especially when she came to a dozen meters in front of him. "Who are you?" asked the gorgeous girl with her silvery bell-like voice. "I'm a guest who came here to eat," said Tan Xiu indifferently. "Who are you?" "I'm the owner of this place." The gorgeous girl smiled. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Gu Xiaoxue, also an immortal cultivator." "What's your name?" "Who's your master?" "Tan Xiu, a loose cultivator." Tan Xiu cupped his fists. "Tan Xiu." Gu Xiaoxue blinked and the face in the painting appeared in her mind again. The name was the same, but why did the face look different? She thought about it and felt that it should be the same name and surname, so she didn't delve into it. Instead, she smilingly said, "There are many martial artists who come to our everlasting feast hall, but only a few cultivators come here. The number of cultivators who have come to our place in the past 10 years is no more than 10. Tan Xiu's expression moved. He was keenly aware of the difference between the two titles from Gu Xiaoxue's mouth, cultivator and immortal cultivator. After a moment of silence, he asked again, "Have you seen other cultivators?" "I have." Gu Xiaoxue nodded. "I also specifically went to many places to invite them to my everlasting feast hall as guests. Unfortunately, cultivators who understand the Tao of alchemy and pharmacology are as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns." As she spoke, her devastatingly beautiful face revealed a sense of disappointment. Tan Xiu narrowed his eyes and nodded. "Since you're the owner of this place, can I ask you a question?" "Speak." Gu Xiaoxue smiled. Tan Xiu asked, "Before I came here, I looked at this place from the outside and found that you guys have set up a formation here. This formation is very powerful. It can cut off water, lock dragons, gather spirit, draw meridians and borrow the sky. The 5 combined into one, forming this feng shui treasure land. What is the name of this formation?" Gu Xiaoxue exclaimed in disbelief, You can actually see the existence of the water block dragon seal array?" "Oh my god! Are you a formation master?" Bang bang, Tan Xiu's heart was beating wildly, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. It must be noted that he was the one who created the water block dragon seal array. Aside from him and his little disciple, no one else knew about it. However, how could this array appear on Earth? Who was it? Could it be her? A huge momentum rose steadily from Tan Xiu's body. In nearly an instant, the earth-shattering aura pressed down on Gu Xiaoxue. A bright light burst out from his eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Tell me, who arranged this water block dragon seal array?" Gu Xiaoxue was stunned. Never once in her wildest dreams did she expect that this boy, who looked almost the same as her, with such a weak cultivation, could actually exude such a terrifying aura. This aura made her very uncomfortable. The intense killing intent contained within made her subconsciously retreat a few steps. "It's my master." Tan Xiu shouted sternly, "Who's your master?" Gu Xiaoxue's brows slightly furrowed, and a bit of anger arose in her heart. She talked to Tan Xiu in a good manner, but he was actually so rude to her. She immediately snorted coldly and resisted the aura exuded by Tan Xiu. At the same time, she said with dissatisfaction, "Why should I tell you? Who are you to me, anyway? Let me tell you, don't think that you can bully me just because I'm a girl. It's very easy for me to defeat you with your cultivation." Tan Xiu's breath stagnated and he immediately retracted the aura he released. As the saying goes, a wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. He admitted that he was not a match for the girl in front of him at all. Furthermore, he also realized that he lost his composure because he was too eager to know who arranged this water block dragon seal array. "I'm sorry, I forgot myself." Tan Xiu cupped his fists and said. Gu Xiaoxue coldly snorted and also retracted the aura she released. Then, she lightly said, "Who my master is none of your business. Also, I don't like your attitude. Hurry up and leave after you finish your meal. Don't come to us again later." Tan Xiu's complexion slightly changed as he lightly said, "I'm the guest, and you're the host. The host should follow the guest's order. You should understand this truth. I don't eat and drink for free, so I'll naturally pay for it." Gu Xiaoxue frowned and said, "Then, we don't welcome you here." Tan Xiu pondered and immediately said, "So, you want to set a threshold for me? Trying to shut me out?" "That's right." Gu Xiaoxue revealed a proud expression. Tan Xiu lightly said, "I heard that you have 1,000 revolution array here. Anyone who can break through the 1,000 revolution array can eat and drink for free here. I think I can give it a try. Lead the way." The proud expression on Gu Xiaoxue's face froze. Her master was the one who set the rules of the 1,000 revolution array. Anyone who could successfully challenge it would become a VIP of the everlasting feast hall. Not only would they be exempted from all expenses, but they would also receive the best treatment. Tan Xiu calmly said, "What? I can't challenge it." Gu Xiaoxue shook her head and said, "Of course you can. However, it's impossible for you to break through the 1,000 revolution array with your cultivation. Even if you can barely break through the first layer, you'll be severely injured if you don't die on the second layer. This 1,000 revolution array has a total of 7 layers. Only by breaking through all of them can you be considered as a success. So far, only 2 people have successfully broken through to the 4th layer. Both of them are powerhouses who have been cultivating for more than 100 years. Tan Xiu asked, "Don't tell me you don't have a VIP here?" Gu Xiaoxue shook her head and said, "No. Whoever can break through the 2nd layer and enter the 3rd layer of the 1,000 revolution array is the winner." In the past decades, a total of 6 people have successfully broken through the 2nd layer and entered the 3rd layer. Tan Xiu rolled his eyes inwardly. He was the one who created this 1,000 revolution array, so how could he not know its power? Even if one had reached the immortal realm, it would be extremely difficult to break through from the 1st layer to the 2nd layer. Even if an immortal with some strength entered the 3rd layer, 80% of them would be severely injured or obliterated. "I'll give it a try," Tan Xiu calmly said. Gu Xiaoxue indifferently said, "It seems that you won't give up until you reach the Yellow River. Since you want to try, then give it a try. It just so happens that I'm quite bored now. Come with me." Tan Xiu didn't speak again. He followed behind Gu Xiaoxue and walked into the depths of the jungle. Along the way, they encountered a large number of security guards in black suits. When they saw Tan Xiu behind Gu Xiaoxue, each and every one of them revealed a strange expression. "Strange, this is the first time we see the little boss with a strange young man, right? What's the origin of that young man? Is he worthy for the little boss to personally accompany him? The little boss has grown up. Could it be that she also yearns for men and women? The young man behind her doesn't look ordinary. How is that possible? Isn't the little boss always arrogant and disdainful of men? How come she's walking together with a strange young man? That young man looks good, but he's absolutely not worthy of our little boss. In my eyes, no one in this world is worthy of the little boss. A toad lusting after a swan's flesh. How can an ordinary man touch the fairy-like little boss? Not worthy." Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue's ears were sharp. Naturally, they heard the words of the security guards clearly. Gu Xiaoxue, who was walking in front, had her back facing Tan Xiu. The corner of her mouth was curved, and a deep smile crawled across her face. And Tan Xiu, who was behind her, smiled bitterly. Listening to the words of the security guards, he almost thought that he was a pile of cow dung. Gu Xiaoxue, this fresh flower, wanted to be inserted into his body. Pay. Tan Xiu drove this absurd thought out of his mind. His eyes moved from Gu Xiaoxue's side to the front. Those casual words also came out of his mouth. Your surname is Gu. It's Gu as in Gu, right? I once had an old friend who also had this surname. Gu Xiaoxue turned her head. Her eyes were filled with contempt as she stared at Tan Xiu. She once again walked forward. You don't need to flatter me. Breaking through the 1,000 revolution array is a sacred thing. Even if you smear honey on your mouth, I will not help you. Moreover, people with the surname Gu are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. I absolutely have no relationship with them. Tan Xiu asked, You have no relationship with them? Does that mean you followed your master's surname? Your master's surname is Gu. Of course. Gu Xiaoxue raised her chin and said. Tan Xiu deeply looked at Gu Xiaoxue's back. His previously calm heart once again rippled. His favorite disciple had the surname Gu, and this surname was given by him. Gu Xiaoxue, have you ever heard the name Gu Yener? What? Gu Xiaoxue was stunned. She suddenly turned her head. Her eyes were incomparably sharp. She stared at Tan Xiu and said, Who are you? How do you know my master's name? Is it true? A storm was set off in Tan Xiu's heart. He incredulously looked at Gu Xiaoxue and hurriedly said, Tell me, where is your master now? Where is she? Gu Xiaoxue angrily replied, I don't know. Tan Xiu said with a sinking tone, Answer me. This question is very important to me. Gu Xiaoxue sneered and said, You haven't answered me yet. How do you know my master's name? I know. You should have heard it from an elder, right? Humph, my master has not been in contact with outsiders for the past 10 years. It's impossible for you to have seen her. Chapter 82. All kinds of thoughts churned in Tan Xiu's mind. The feeling of déjà vu towards Gu Xiaoxue's master was getting more and more intense. However, he faintly felt that the time was not right. He had been in the immortal world for 10,000 years, but only 1 year had passed on Earth. And 6,500 years ago, Gu Yan, disappeared in the immortal world. Even if she accidentally came to Earth, it should be within a year on Earth. If she had been on Earth for decades, then wouldn't she be hundreds of thousands of years old in the immortal world? Tan Xiu felt that the matter was more and more fishy as he carefully analyzed it. He fell into silence while looking at Gu Xiaoxue's incomparably cold face. His EQ. Not enough. But his IQ was very high. He might be lacking when it came to dealing with people, but when it came to thinking about things, he was able to think about all aspects. Gu Xiaoxue was unwilling to say it, and he couldn't beat her. Therefore, he could only suppress his curiosity and no longer continue to ask. Of course, there was still a layer of worry in his heart. After all, even his woman and brother, who had been friends with him for hundreds of years, could betray him for benefits. Would that disciple still remember him as her master? After such a long time, would there still be a master and disciple relationship between them? Gu Xiaoxue looked at Tan Xiu's silent expression. A proud expression appeared on her face again. She hummed and said, Actually, it's not impossible for you to see my master. As long as you can break through the 3rd layer of the 1,000 revolution array, I can take you to see her 3 months later. However, with your strength, let alone breaking through the 3rd layer, I'm afraid you'll be seriously injured and have to withdraw from the 2nd layer. Continue to lead the way. Tan Xiu's tone became extremely firm. Gu Xiaoxue said with a sneer, You really won't turn back until you hit the southern wall. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Since you insist on going your own way, don't blame me for not reminding you when you're seriously injured. Let's go. They walked forward for 100 meters. A security guard in a suit stopped them. "Little boss, Grandmaster Xiao and Grandmaster Miao are here. They're waiting for you in front of the Thousand Revolution Array." Gu Xiaoxue frowned and said, "Why are they here again?" 2 years ago, they were trapped in the second layer of the Thousand Revolution Array and were unable to break into the third layer. Moreover, they were seriously injured at that time. Could it be that in these 2 years, not only did they recover from their injuries, their cultivation also advanced? The security personnel said, "It looks like it's true." Gu Xiaoxue turned her head, glanced at Tan Xiu, and then walked towards the direction of the Thousand Revolution Array in large strides. She had been very bored and lonely recently. Someone else was taking care of the Everlasting Feast Hall's business, so she only cultivated every day. She had thought that it would be interesting to meet Tan Xiu today, but she did not expect that there would be 2 more. In the depths of the forest, surrounded by the lush forest, was a square. It wasn't big, but there were some jade stones placed in every corner of the square. At the edge of the square, 2 middle-aged men were sitting cross-legged. Their deep eyes constantly swept across the square in front of them. "Brother Miao, how much certainty do you have this time?" Xiao Mingjun broke the silence and asked. Miao Wentong said confidently, 80%. Xiao Mingjun was surprised, "Are you that confident?" Miao Wentong said with a faint smile, "Brother Xiao, I'm afraid you're more confident than me, right? People who haven't broken through the Thousand Revolution Array may not know that this Thousand Revolution Array is actually not a real killing array, but an array used by cultivators to train their disciples. As long as you don't rashly break through it, you won't have to worry about your life. It really doesn't matter if you get injured. I think you should have benefited a lot from the Thousand Revolution Array 2 years ago, right?" Xiao Mingjun nodded and said with a smile, "Indeed. The person who created this Thousand Revolution Array is definitely a genius in the cultivation world. His strength must be extremely amazing. To be honest, if possible, I really want to worship the person who created this Thousand Revolution Array as my master." "Ha ha ha, great minds think alike." Miao Wentong laughed. "You two came uninvited, don't tell me you want to break through the Thousand Revolution Array again. If I remember correctly, you have already broken through it 3 times. According to my master's rules, the 4th person who tries to break through the Thousand Revolution Array needs to pay 1,000,000 yuan fee. If you want to break through, you must pay." Gu Xiaoxue slowly walked over with Tan Xiu. Her expression was tranquil, but her words were a bit cold. Xiao Mingjun and Miao Wentong saw Gu Xiaoxue and Tan Xiu. Although they were surprised about Tan Xiu's origin, they still stood up as fast as they could. They picked up the suitcases beside them and handed them over to Gu Xiaoxue, saying, "We've prepared the money. Please accept it." Gu Xiaoxue made a gesture to several security personnel nearby. Several security personnel quickly arrived and took the 2 suitcases. After checking and confirming that the amount of money was correct, they quickly took the 2 suitcases and left. Go and ring the 100 rings bell." "Yes." A big man cupped his fists and strode toward the distance. A few minutes later, bang, 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 the bell's 27 rings reverberated in the world, passing into the ears of everyone in the Everlasting Feast Hall. Many guests came out of their boxes, looking surprised as they listened to the bell and inquired the attendants about the reason. "The 100 rings bell, someone wants to break through the Thousand Revolution Array, 27 rings, 9 for each person. A total of 3 people want to break through the Thousand Revolution Array. Martial artists are going to break through the array to select the VIPs. The 100 rings bell has rung. All guests can go to the scene to watch. Today, the guests will be able to broaden their horizons." Along with the excited explanation from the attendants, the guests in the 108 boxes of the Everlasting Feast Hall were led by the security personnel as they rushed toward the Thousand Revolution Array. In one of the boxes, Jia Ruidao and his 3 apprentices were absent-mindedly listening to the attendant's explanation. Today, the most important thing for them was to serve Tan Xiu well and make Tan Xiu satisfied. Otherwise, In case Tan Xiu were to quit, not only would they go bankrupt, but they would also lose all their reputation. They would never be able to lift their heads in the professional gambler circle for the rest of their lives. 3 guests, do you want to go and have a look? The young and beautiful waitress asked after explaining the situation to them. Jia Ruidao impatiently waved his hand and said, we're not interested. Just go and do your thing. Wait a minute. Gong Dalong suddenly stopped the attendant as he looked at Jia Ruidao and said, Master, as far as I know, Grandmaster Tang seems to know some kung fu. Perhaps, he is the one who is going to break through the 1,000 revolution array. Just think about it. Breaking through the 1,000 revolution array is something that only happens once in a year or two. But Grandmaster Tang has come and someone has already broken through. I think the possibility of it being Grandmaster Tang is very high. Jia Ruidao's expression moved. He also heard that Tan Xiu knew kung fu. He immediately nodded and said, then, let's go and have a look. Even if it's not Tan Xiu, I'm afraid he will also go and have a look. In the jungle behind the everlasting feast hall, a large number of guests had arrived, and the entire edge of the square was already crowded with people. Dozens of security personnel of the everlasting feast hall blocked everyone outside the square, forbidding anyone from entering even half a step. Gu Xiaoxue crossed her arms. Her eyes occasionally glanced at Tan Xiu, but most of them were lingering between Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong. After 2 years, she really wanted to know how much progress they had made. Could they successfully break through the 3rd layer of the 1,000 revolution array? Little boss, it's almost time. The security captain came to Gu Xiaoxue's side and whispered. Gu Xiaoxue slightly nodded. She then looked at Tan Xiu, Xiao Mingjin, and Miao Wentong as she lightly said, today, the 3 of you want to break through the 1,000 revolution array. Regardless of life or death, it has nothing to do with our everlasting feast hall. Whoever can break through to the 3rd floor will be a distinguished guest of our everlasting feast hall. 3 people. Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong looked at each other in dismay. At the same time, their gazes were cast on Tan Xiu. Xiao Mingjin hesitated for a moment as he looked at Tan Xiu and said, little brother, do you also want to challenge the 1,000 revolution array? This isn't a joke. If you don't have any real skills, you might really lose your life in there. Miao Wentong also nodded and said, yes. Young people should be more pragmatic and not bite off more than they can chew. Although this 1,000 revolution array is helpful to cultivators, but without strength, even if you don't die, you will still be injured. I know. Tan Xiu looked at the 2 people who judged people by their appearance, but he couldn't feel any disgust in his heart. He was the one who created the 1,000 revolution array, so how could he not know about it? However, he believed that he would be able to widen their horizons. Upon seeing Tan Xiu's appearance, Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong secretly smiled wryly inside. They were loyal to the sun and the moon, but Tan Xiu simply didn't listen to their words. Forget it. A trace of anger gushed out from the bottom of Xiao Mingjin's heart as he indifferently said, since little brother is unwilling to give up until he reaches the Yellow River, then it's useless for us to say anything more. After saying that, he turned around and cupped his fists toward Gu Xiaoxue, and then strode into the square. The entire square looked like there were only some jades placed randomly. But those jades, as well as the array patterns that were invisible to the naked eye, arranged into the 1,000 revolution array. The moment Xiao Mingjin stepped into the 1,000 revolution array, his footsteps suddenly stopped. After a moment, he began to walk again. In the eyes of the surrounding onlookers, Xiao Mingjin was like a headless fly as he repeatedly walked within the radius of more than 10 square meters. But for Tan Xiu and Gu Xiaoxue, as well as Miao Wentong, who had once challenged the 1,000 revolution array, it was a different scene. Inside the 1,000 revolution array, the moment Xiao Mingjin stepped inside, it was as if he had arrived in another world. Looking at the scenery of the spring, where the grasses were growing and the nightingales were flying, and feeling the gentle spring breeze caressing his face, his spirit was highly concentrated. He had once challenged the 1,000 revolution array, so he was very familiar with the first layer. Don't look at this beautiful mountain forest, it actually contained countless murderous intentions. Suddenly, a spring thunder exploded out of nowhere. The bright and beautiful sunshine was covered by the floating dark clouds, and the entire world turned a lot darker. A drizzle floated down from the sky, and this drizzle was very corrosive. "It's coming." Xiao Mingzhen's heart tightened. His eyes vigilantly looked all around. He suddenly found that in the surrounding woods, a spotted snake as thick as an arm was coming toward him. Humph, having experienced this once, Xiao Mingzhen didn't panic. He reached out his hand and took out a yellow paper talisman from his bosom. With a flick of his wrist, the yellow paper talisman turned into a raging inferno, violently rushing toward the spotted snakes from all directions. Hiss! The spotted snakes hissed in the sea of fire as they lost their lives in the sea of fire. But even more spotted snakes rushed forward wave after wave. Their bright red tongues and cold eyes were firmly locked on Xiao Mingzhen. However, a sharp dagger appeared in Xiao Mingzhen's hand. As he moved, the spotted snakes that were rushing toward him were all killed by him. Found it. Chapter 83. A few minutes later, his sharp eyes discovered a dark yellow snake that was only as thick as a wrist among the group of snakes. This little snake had a purple crown on its head. Under the protection of the group of snakes, it hissed continuously, like a commander on the battlefield, commanding the soldiers to kill. Go! The dagger in Xiao Mingzhen's hand instantly left his hand and accurately shot the dark yellow snake 7 inches away from him. Buzz! With the death of the small snake, the world before Xiao Mingzhen's eyes changed. The world that was originally overflowing with the scent of spring was now filled with flowers and the scorching sun. Outside the 1,000 Revolution Array. Tan Xiu narrowed his eyes as he looked at Xiao Mingzhen, who was walking 7 to 8 steps towards the center of the square. He secretly nodded. Although he couldn't see the situation inside the array, but for Xiao Mingzhen to be able to quickly pass through the first layer, it could be considered good. Gu Xiaoxue and Miao Wentong shared the same thought. Brother Xiao, you're really amazing to be able to pass the first level in such a short time. If it were me, I'm afraid it wouldn't be so easy. The first layer of the 1,000 Revolution Array was the Spring Killing Array, and the second layer was the Summer Killing Array. I wonder what the third floor is. Miao Wentong could not help but sigh. Gu Xiaoxue squinted at him and lightly said, the 1,000 Revolution Array has a total of 7 layers. The first 4 layers correspond to the 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn and winter. Behind them was naturally autumn slaying and winter slaying. He's already so old, and this is his second time challenging the array. If he's still slow, it'll be too embarrassing. Miao Wentong's mouth couldn't help but twitch a few times. It seemed that he was older than Xiao Mingzhen. If he used more time than Xiao Mingzhen to rush through the first layer, then he would really be disgracing himself. The surrounding crowd of onlookers looked at Xiao Mingzhen with inexplicable expressions on their faces. Seeing him randomly walking all over the place, playing the act of burning yellow paper into a ball of fire, and then taking out a dagger to hack and slash, everyone couldn't help but not know whether to laugh or cry. He can't have lost his mind, right? Why did you do such a strange thing? What kind of trick are you playing? You want all of us to come here just to look at this thing? What 1,000 Revolution Array, it looks like it's real. I think he's just trying to mystify us. It's so boring. It was a good meal, but it turned into a fool's play. How boring. What the hell is this everlasting feast hall doing? Are you kidding us? Gu Xiaoxue listened to the discussion of the crowd and immediately made a gesture to the security captain. Immediately, the security captain loudly said, Gentlemen, you don't understand the reason. Let me explain it to you. This 1,000 Revolution Array is divided into 7 layers. As he explained, the people around him suddenly understood. However, they still held a skeptical attitude towards the mysteries of the 1,000 Revolution Array. Some people, in order to verify the authenticity of the array, attempted to break through the security guards and step inside. However, because there were too many guests, the security personnel were unable to stop everyone. More than a dozen people rushed into the Thousand Revolution array. A second or two after they entered, they stopped in unison. In fact, their bodies stiffened and their eyes widened in disbelief. Get them out! Gu Xiaoxue shouted. Suddenly, more than a dozen security personnel rushed into the Thousand Revolution array. They quickly appeared at the side of the dozens of lifeless guests and violently dragged them out of the array. Heavens! I didn't drink too much, did I? How come inside? Illusion, it's definitely an illusion. How can there be a world inside? It's really an array. Amazing. It's really amazing. Honey, pinch me. I want to feel the pain. There's really an array, as if awakened from a dream, the 10 people shouted one after another. The other guests suddenly understood that the square in front of them was probably really arranged into an array. Tan Xiu remained silent as he watched Xiao Mingjin constantly moving inside the Thousand Revolution array, constantly waving his dagger to attack. He found that the arrangement of the Thousand Revolution array here was extremely simple and crude. Compared to the Thousand Revolution array he had created, it was like heaven and earth apart. He was even confident that if he were to go inside, he would definitely be able to break the array easily. 20 minutes later, Tan Xiu's expression shifted as he looked at Xiao Mingjin, who was approaching the center of Guangzhou a dozen steps. Miao Wentang's expression turned solemn. He looked at Xiao Mingjin's pale face as a bit of worry emerged in his heart. Because he could see that Xiao Mingjin was very strenuous, yet he had already broken through the second layer and rushed to the third layer. This showed that his strength was much stronger than 2 years ago. Even to the extent that he had reached the Everlasting Feast Hall's VIP status. Boom, a loud explosion sounded. Xiao Mingjin, who had just broken through the third layer of the Thousand Revolution array, was directly thrown out. His body heavily smashed on the edge of the square. After half a minute, he struggled to prop up his arms and spurted out a mouthful of blood. Brother Xiao, are you okay? Miao Wentang dashed to Xiao Mingjin's side. Seeing that he was about to get up, he quickly reached out to support his arm and asked with a concerned expression. Xiao Mingjin spurted out a mouthful of blood. His complexion turned slightly rosy as he bitterly shook his head and said, I'm fine. But I didn't break through the third layer. This Thousand Revolution array is really abnormal. Miao Wentang gently patted his shoulder and said, don't bite off more than you can chew. You can break through the third layer, that's already very amazing. I don't even have the confidence to break through the third layer. Not to mention that you've finally become the Everlasting Feast Hall's VIP. Even if you can't eat later, you can still come here to eat and drink for free. Xiao Mingjin grinned. His mood was much better. Miao Wentang stretched his muscles as he walked toward the Thousand Revolution array and said with a smile, it's my turn now. I hope I can reach your level and experience the might of the Thousand Revolution array's third layer. Tan Xiu watched Miao Wentang enter the Thousand Revolution array. He then walked to Xiao Mingjin's side and grabbed his wrist. Under Xiao Mingjin's flabbergasted expression, he lightly said, your internal injury is serious. You need to recuperate your qi and blood in time. With your cultivation, you'll be able to recover in 10 days or 2 months. Xiao Mingjin pulled his hand back and said with dissatisfaction, nonsense. I know my own situation very well. This kind of injury is very normal for us cultivators. Tan Xiu lightly said, yes, it's normal. But it's not worth it to waste time to recuperate. I can give you a healing prescription. As long as you take the medicine according to my prescription, your internal injury will be completely healed in 3 days. However, since you're quite rich, I'll charge you a fee. Xiao Mingjin stared blankly for a moment. He looked at Tan Xiu again as he asked with a bewildered expression, are you really sure that I'll be able to recover in 3 days? Yes. Tan Xiu resolutely said. Xiao Mingjin said with a sinking tone, all right, name your price, 1 million. Tan Xiu calmly said. Xiao Mingjin exclaimed, 1 million. 1 million for a prescription. You might as well rob someone. Tan Xiu lightly said, buy it or not, it's up to you. If it wasn't because of your sincere tone and persuading me not to break the 1,000 revolution array, let alone 1 million, even if you give me 100 million, I wouldn't care about you. Xiao Mingjin was furious. However, he was, after all, a person with status. He took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He then said with a sinking tone, I promise you, I'll buy it. However, you need to give me the prescription first. After I take the medicine, if the effect is really like what you said, I'll give you double the price. It's a deal. Tan Xiu nodded as he looked at Miao Wentong in the 1,000 revolution array. Gu Xiaoshua's black brows slightly wrinkled. After listening to the conversation between Tan Xiu and Xiao Mingjin, her line of sight never left Tan Xiu. After being silent for a long time, she leaned toward Tan Xiu and asked in a low voice, do you know pharmacology? A bit. Tan Xiu casually said. Gu Xiaoshua quickly asked, Twilight Nightmare, do you know about this disease? Twilight Nightmare? Tan Xiu's expression stagnated. He incredulously looked at Gu Xiaoshua and exclaimed, how do you know about Twilight Nightmare? This is Shade Demon Zhu Wushou's most insidious killing move. Gu Xiaoshua frowned and said, I don't know what you're talking about. But I want to know, can you treat this disease? I can't. Tan Xiu shook his head and said. He indeed couldn't treat it. It's not that he didn't know how to treat it, but he didn't have the means to treat it. Shade Demon Zhu Wushou was the immortal world's apex supreme. His cultivation was almost comparable to his former self. But Zhu Wushou's most powerful move was the Twilight Nightmare. Even if one was lucky enough to survive this killing move, they would fall into a nightmare. Occasionally, they would wake up, but there was no way for them to completely recover. To treat it, 2 extremely rare treasures were needed, Chrono Crystal and Demonic Revival Grass. The Demonic Revival Grass grew in the demon world's heart, which was a place with extreme yin energy. Apart from the few supremes of the demon world, who could barely reach the demon world's heart, it was simply very difficult for others to enter, let alone to obtain the Demonic Revival Grass from there. Chrono Crystal. Rumor had it that a spatial crack existed between the immortal and divine worlds. But apart from deities, no immortal dared to go there. Because even a little bit of carelessness would cause one's soul to fly away and scatter in the spatial crack, consigning them to eternal damnation. To concoct the holy medicine to treat the Twilight Nightmare, one must have the Chrono Crystal and the Demonic Revival Grass as the 2 main ingredients. Otherwise, no one would be able to cure it. Even Zhu Wushou didn't have the means to cure it. Gu Xiaoshua looked at Tan Xiu with disappointment. Once again, she revealed a distant look and looked at Miao Wentong inside the 1,000 revolution array. More than half an hour later, Miao Wentong successfully broke into the 3rd layer. Although the time he spent was longer than Xiao Mingjin, the time he persisted in the 3rd layer, Autumn Kill, was much longer than Xiao Mingjin. Cough, cough, Miao Wentong coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood. His complexion was as pale as paper as he barely managed to walk out of the 1,000 revolution array. Brother Miao, are you all right? Xiao Mingjin supported him and asked with concern. Miao Wentong shook his head and squeezed out a smile. There's no danger to my life. But my injuries are serious. I won't be able to recover without 2 or 3 months of recuperation. Chapter 84. Xiao Mingjin looked up and glanced at Tan Xiu. He hesitated for a moment before he told Tan Xiu's words to Miao Wentong. Finally, he said, I've promised him that if his prescription is really effective, I'll give him 2 million as a reward. Miao Wentong sneered and said, are you kidding me? If there really is such a holy healing medicine in this world, let alone 2 million for a prescription, even if it's 20 million, I'd still be willing to buy it. Tan Xiu lightly said, you can try it. If it's really effective, I hope you won't go back on your words. I'll be waiting for you to send me 20 million. Humph. Ignorant brat. Miao Wentong coldly said. Tan Xiu coldly glanced at him as he turned around and walked toward the 1,000 revolution array. Miao Wentong loudly said, "You're Tan Xiu, right? I advise you to give up. Although I don't know how powerful you are, but with your age, trying to break through the 1,000 revolution array is like looking for a beating. There are a lot of people here, don't make a fool of yourself." Brother Miao. Xiao Mingjin quickly pulled Miao Wentong's arm and whispered. Although he looked down on Tan Xiu and felt that Tan Xiu was too arrogant, but with their status, they wouldn't do anything that would be beneath their status. Gu Xiaoshua's mouth curled up as she faintly smiled while looking at Tan Xiu's back. She was secretly helpless in her heart. She had felt Tan Xiu's imposing manner. Although it was very strong, but with her cultivation, she could naturally feel Tan Xiu's strength. Therefore, she was very sure that there was a huge gap between Tan Xiu and Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong. The two of them were barely able to break through to the 3rd layer, but Tan Xiu might not even be able to enter the 2nd layer. In the crowd, Jia Ruidao and his 3 apprentices had already noticed Tan Xiu. However, he didn't expect that Tan Xiu would also challenge the 1,000 revolution array. Therefore, he and his 3 apprentices didn't come out to meet Tan Xiu. Daoist Jia Rui was a shrewd old man. Naturally, he also wanted to see the depth of Tan Xiu's strength. However, when he saw Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong coming out of the 1,000 revolution array, a bad feeling arose in his heart. This was because he was going to make a bet with his opponent tomorrow. Before the bet, the most taboo thing to do was to exhaust his mind, energy, and body. If Tan Xiu was injured, what would happen to the bet tomorrow? We must stop it. Jia Ruidao squeezed out from the crowd and rushed toward Tan Xiu. Then, he shouted, "Brother Tang, don't go inside. I have something to say." Tan Xiu's footsteps suddenly came to a halt. There was a puzzled look in his eyes as he looked at the approaching Jia Ruidao and asked, "What do you want to say?" Jia Ruidao forced a smile and said, "Brother Tang, we still have to gamble with Chen Kai's people tomorrow. If by any chance something bad happens to you in the 1,000 revolution array, then tomorrow, you don't believe me?" Tan Xiu's complexion turned cold as he said with a sinking tone. Jia Ruidao forced a smile and said, "It's not that I don't believe you. It's because a professional gambler's biggest taboo is to exhaust his mind, energy, and body before the match. Only when you're in a good state of mind can you win every bet." Tan Xiu said without being salty or light, "You've been resting well every day. How come I don't see you winning?" "Humph. I've already made up my mind. Don't say anything." After that, he turned around and stepped into the 1,000 revolution array. At the side, Miao Wentong burst into laughter. "Brother Xiao, did you see that? Even Tan Xiu's companion doesn't believe him. Do you think he has the ability to break the 1,000 revolution array? Just wait. We'll have a joke to watch." Xiao Mingjin forced a smile and secretly sighed. Obviously, he also agreed with Miao Wentong's statement. Inside the 1,000 revolution array, the moment Tan Xiu stepped inside, he wasn't surprised by the changes in the scenery of the world. After looking around, his eyes locked on a towering ancient tree. As his toes touched the ground, his body was like an arrow released from a bowstring. In less than a breath's time, he had already sprinted to his destination. Puff! A sharp Mitsubishi army knife appeared in his hand as he stabbed the ancient tree's trunk with the tip of the knife. At this moment, a small, dark yellow snake was pierced through 7 inches below its head. Buzz! The scenery of the world changed as the hot summer appeared. Hundreds of flowers bloomed and hundreds of birds sang. Tan Xiu sized up the surrounding environment. His eyes finally fell on a distant path. In the middle of that path, there was a stone tablet embedded in the ground. Almost without the slightest hesitation, he sprinted with his fastest speed. Time! His current cultivation was not enough. Before he had the valiant strength, he could only fight against time. In a flash, he sprinted to the front of the stone tablet. He clenched his fist and used all his strength to punch the stone tablet. Boom, the stone tablet was smashed. The lions and tigers that had just appeared in the surroundings instantly vanished. But the surrounding environment had also changed. Outside the 1,000 revolution array, everyone's eyes were fixed on Tan Xiu. They looked at Tan Xiu with a strange expression. Their eyes revealed an inconceivable expression. They clearly remembered that Xiao Mingjin and Miao Wentong had walked more than 20 steps toward the center of the square, and it took them more than half an hour. How is this possible? Miao Wentong uttered a cry of surprise. His face was filled with an inconceivable expression. His eyeballs almost popped out from his eye sockets. Even more exaggerated was that, in order to prove that it was not an illusion, he raised his arm and rubbed his eyes. Then, he looked at Tan Xiu in the square again. It's not an illusion. How did he do it? Xiao Mingjin's heart was also thumping at this moment. His face was also filled with shock. His lips squirmed a few times as he bitterly said, 10 seconds. He only used 10 seconds to successfully break through the second layer and enter the third layer. Is he still a human? How did he do it? Yes. How did he do it? At the side, Gu Xiaoxue was tongue-tied as she looked at Tan Xiu's figure. A storm was set off in her heart. She clearly remembered what her master had told her. In this world, except for one person, no one could easily break through the layers. Even the most powerful group of super experts in the other world couldn't do it. Even master could only barely reach this level, right? Who is he? How could he see through the mystery of the 1,000 revolution array? How could he find the core of each layer in an instant? Gu Xiaoxue's vision moved away from Tang Xiu's body with difficulty. She looked at the shocked expression on the faces of the people around her. Only then did she confirm that she was not dreaming. There really was someone who broke through the first 2 layers of the 1,000 revolution array in less than 10 seconds and entered the third layer, the autumn strike. At this moment, Tan Xiu was not aware of the shock of the people outside. In front of him, the scene of the fruitful autumn kill array had already appeared. It was an orchard. The fruit trees were full of glistening yellow and bright red fruits. The faint fruity fragrance made people salivate. A group of wild geese flew over the orchard, leaving only a burst of calls. The effect of this simplified version is really bad. Tan Xiu was not in a hurry to act this time. Instead, he stared at a direction and quietly waited. Trespassing into this array, die. A roar came from the inside of the orchard. A ferocious-looking big man, whose whole body was wrapped in chains, quickly rushed out of the orchard. He waved a mace in his hand. The sharp spikes on the mace were suffused with a faint cold light. Tan Xiu squatted down and casually picked up a small stone from the ground. He faintly smiled and said, "When I first created this array, I really spent a lot of effort. But I left a secret door in each layer. Do you believe that I can defeat you with just a small stone? Ridiculous." The ferocious-looking big man seemed to have spiritual wisdom. He waved the mace and fiercely smashed it toward Tan Xiu's head. Fall. Tan Xiu flicked his finger, and the stone instantly hit the ferocious-looking big man's throat. Almost in an instant, the ferocious-looking big man's body suddenly froze. The mace was only a foot away from Tan Xiu's head, directly suspended. With a gust of autumn wind, the ferocious-looking big man, with a face full of unwillingness, turned into particles and drifted away with the wind. Buzz, the scenery of the world changed again. The cool autumn wind also became incomparably cold. The place he was in was no longer a fruitful orchard. Instead, it was a world of ice and snow. White snow, as far as the eye can see. Winter kill. Tang Xiu straightly sat cross-legged and inserted the sharp dagger directly into the snowy ground in front of him on the left. A rolling wolf howls came from the distant horizon. In just a few seconds, in the sky full of flying snow, countless snow wolves were rushing over. Outside the 1,000 revolution array, Miao Wentong's body swayed a few times. Because of his unstable chi and blood, coupled with the shock in his heart, he suddenly sat down on the ground. He seemed to be not aware of his own embarrassment. Looking at Tan Xiao, who once again walked 6 or 7 steps toward the square, his heart seemed to explode with thunder. The 4th layer? It must be the 4th layer. Miao Wentong suddenly remembered that before Tan Xiao entered the 1000 Revolution Array, he mocked and ridiculed him. He originally thought that Tan Xiao would not be able to pass through the 1st layer. But he never dreamed that Tan Xiao not only passed through the 1st layer, but also passed through the 2nd layer, the 3rd layer, and directly rushed into the 4th layer. In a flash. He really wanted to see a crack appear in the ground in front of him. If there was, he would definitely crawl into it and never come out again to disgrace himself. Xiao Mingzhen's mouth twitched. He turned his head with difficulty and looked at Gu Xiaoxue. At this moment, Gu Xiaoxue was stunned. She foolishly looked at Tan Xiao and almost raised her hand to slap herself. Because she was clear about Tan Xiao's cultivation. But she never dreamed that Tan Xiao could actually break into the 4th layer. The 1000 Revolution Array was not an ordinary array. Even a cultivator who was more powerful than her might not necessarily be able to break into the 4th layer. But how did Tan Xiao do it? How could he break into the 4th layer? Gu Xiaoxue remembered what she said to Tan Xiao before. A tide of regret surged in her heart. If she knew that Tan Xiao could break into the 4th layer, how could she bring shame to herself? A frog at the bottom of a well. Gu Xiaoxue's mind suddenly thought of this idiom. She felt that this idiom was really appropriate to describe her. Miss Gu, Tan Xiao, he. Chapter 85. Gu Xiaoxue was startled by Xiao Mingzhen's sudden question. After calming herself down, she forced a smile and said, "You've already guessed it, so why do you still ask me? To be honest, his cultivation is far worse than yours. But who would have thought that he could actually break through to the 4th layer? Is it really the 4th layer?" Xiao Mingzhen was dumbfounded. He had a few speculations in his heart, but now that it was confirmed, the shock in his heart had reached the point where it was difficult to increase again. His status was not ordinary, and his ability to judge people was even more formidable. But now, he found out that he had really misjudged this time. A person can't be judged by their appearance, just like the sea can't be measured with a pail. He was really wrong this time. Gu Xiaoxue said, "I don't want to admit it, but it's the truth." Xiao Mingzhen desperately swallowed his saliva. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He had seen a lot of cultivation geniuses before, but he had never seen or heard of such a monstrous talent like Tan Xiao. "I suspect that he should be an array grandmaster." Gu Xiaoxue hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice. "Are you kidding me?" Miao Wentong crawled up from the ground with difficulty and shouted with a somewhat hoarse voice. Gu Xiaoxue coldly glanced at him and snorted, "If he's not an array grandmaster, how could he easily break the first 3 layers of the 1000 Revolution Array? His cultivation is not high, I'm sure of it." "Your cultivation is indeed high, but can you break through to the 4th layer?" Miao Wentong was speechless. He only felt a burning sensation on his face. It was as if a pair of invisible slaps had slapped his square face from left to right. It was really painful. More than 10 meters away, Jia Ruidao stared blankly at Tan Xiao's figure. His mouth was opened so wide that even a duck's egg wouldn't be a problem. At his side, his eldest disciple, Gong Dalong, whispered, "Master, Grandmaster Tang seems to be very powerful." He actually walked further into the square than the other two. Jia Ruidao slowly turned his head. The vacant look in his eyes disappeared a lot as he bitterly said, "What I don't want the most now is for him to rush to a higher layer. The higher the layer, the greater the possibility of him getting injured. I'm afraid his injuries will be more serious." Gong Dalong was stunned and fell into silence. He understood that his master's concerns were right. If Tan Xiao's injuries were severe and delayed tomorrow's bet, then the two of them would really be finished. Inside the 1000 Revolution Array. Tan Xiu looked at the approaching snow wolf, and the smile in his eyes deepened. If it was someone else, they would definitely be frightened out of their wits when they saw the snow wolves swarming towards them. However, he was different. He was the one who created the 1000 revolution array, so he knew how to break it. Aoo! The howls of the wolves joined together and pierced through the clouds. But strangely, the pack of wolves around him stopped a dozen meters away from Tan Xiu. Their green eyes glinted coldly, but they were not staring at Tan Xiu. Instead, they were staring at the Mitsubishi Army knife in front of Tan Xiu. Array. What was important was the formation pattern and the formation eye. Tan Xiu knew where the formation eye was, and he was also clear about the engraving of the formation pattern. The Mitsubishi Army knife in front of him on the left coincided with the formation eye, and was located at the connection point of the formation pattern. As long as the Mitsubishi Army knife was not pulled out, the surrounding wolves would not be able to rush over. And the fourth layer's winter killing, the most important thing was time. An incense stick worth of time. As long as he could hold on for an incense stick worth of time, the fourth layer would collapse by itself. Soon. An incense stick worth of time passed. Buzz. As the surrounding scene changed, the world of ice and snow dissipated and was replaced by a yellow dirt path. On the side of the path was a large river. The river was surging and surging. An old man, wearing a straw raincoat and holding a fishing rod, sat alone on the bow of the boat in the river, quietly fishing. When Tan Xiu's figure appeared on the riverside, the boat moved without any wind and slowly approached Tan Xiu. Ferryman. Tan Xiu calmly said. The old man smiled slightly and said, "Welcome, it's my honor to serve you." Tan Xiu flew to the boat and calmly said, "Cross the river." "Okay." The old man nodded and smiled. The boat glided and gradually sailed to the middle of the river. However, at this moment, the old man on the bow suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a gust of wind. The boat began to shake violently. In the river around the boat, swordfish constantly jumped up, and their jumping trajectory happened to be aimed at Tan Xiu. At the same time, a flock of flame birds flew in the sky. This kind of bird was burning with fire, and its sharp claws spread open as it rushed toward Tan Xiu. "Xiu, Mom misses you so much." The scene in front of Tan Xiu changed slightly, and he appeared at home. And his mother, who was crying and washing her face, rushed up to him in surprise. "Humph," Tan Xiu coldly snorted. As his aura suddenly rose, the surrounding scene instantly shattered. He had experienced this kind of illusion countless times. If it was in the past, he might be immersed in this environment for a long time. Even if he knew that it was not his real home, and not his real mother, he still could not help but be affectionate with his mother for a moment. But now, he had returned from the immortal world, and it was easy for him to see his mother. Therefore, he did not need this kind of illusion, nor did he have the slightest burden. "Die for me." The Mitsubishi Army knife was waved again and again. Tan Xiu's figure also moved quickly. His current cultivation was very weak, and his strength was only 3000 jin. It was very strenuous for him to kill these swordfish and flame birds. If he was not careful, he would be seriously injured or even killed. But he had rich experience in fighting, and this kind of scene was child's play for him. Not to mention, the requirement for this pass was not to kill all the swordfish and flame birds, but to persist until the boat reached the other side, which would be very fast. Outside the 1000 revolution array, Gu Xiaoxue was already shocked and numb by Tang Xiu's lightning speed. Originally, she thought that for Tan Xiu to be able to break into the fourth layer, he should have reached his limit. However, Tan Xiu's success once again made her at a loss. Gu Xiaoxue's strength was very strong. She had reached the point where she could kill Tan Xiu with a wave of her hand. But she asked herself honestly. She absolutely could not do it to Tan Xiu's level. Since she started to break into the fifth layer at the age of 10, she had done it hundreds and thousands of times in the past 10 years, but never once did she break into the fifth layer. What was the world of the fifth layer? She had heard of it, but she had never seen it before. Even an array grandmaster can't do it to this point, right? Gu Xiaoxue regretted. She regretted that she should not have looked down on Tan Xiu before. Because Tan Xiu's heaven-defying ability to break into the array had broken her common sense. At this moment, Miao Wentang's complexion has become deathly pale. Looking at Xiao Mingjun beside him, he almost could not help but pull Xiao Mingjun and flee in distress. Disgraceful. He finally tasted the taste of disgraceful. That taste was very bitter, more bitter than gold thread. Idle. Xiao Mingjun's eyes were somewhat blurred as he muttered to himself. However, his words were like a sharp knife that fiercely stabbed into Miao Wentang's heart. The pain almost made him want to shed tears. As for the surrounding crowd, although there were a few people who left because it was too late, most of them were waiting. They did not know which layer Tan Xiu had broken into, but they were very clear that Tan Xiu's level was definitely higher than Xiao Mingjun and Miao Wentang's. Impossible. A cry of alarm came out from Gu Xiaoxue's mouth. Suddenly, everyone found that Tan Xiu's figure had moved closer to the center of the square by 7 or 8 meters. Xiao Mingjun turned his head and looked at Gu Xiaoxue, who had lost her self-control. He hurriedly asked, "Miss Gu, Tan Xiu, did he succeed again?" "Yes." Gu Xiaoxue, who was shocked to the point of numbness, nodded and said. Xiao Mingjun blankly said, "The 5th layer." He actually broke through the 5th layer and reached the 6th layer. Isn't this too terrifying? It's terrifying. Gu Xiaoxue's expression was complicated. Looking at Tan Xiu's figure, there was an indescribable feeling in her heart. Recalling the various situations after meeting Tan Xiu, she suddenly realized that she had never been able to see through Tan Xiu. It was like looking at the reflection of the moon in the water. Tan Xiu's whole body seemed to be shrouded by an illusory and misty aura. After a moment, Tan Xiu walked out of the 1000 revolution array. His complexion was faintly pale, but he didn't seem to be in a difficult situation. The moment he came out, hundreds of eyes simultaneously fell on him. "Now, am I qualified to be the Everlasting Feast Hall's VIP?" Tan Xiu came before Gu Xiaoxue and calmly asked. Gu Xiaoxue subconsciously nodded. Then, she suddenly sobered up and hurriedly asked, "Tan Xiu, your cultivation is obviously very low. How could you break through the 6th layer? You must know, since my master arranged the 1000 revolution array decades ago, although only a few people came to break through it, the 2 most powerful ones were barely able to break through to the 5th layer. No one has ever entered the 6th layer. How did you do it?" Tan Xiu indifferently said, "No comment." Gu Xiaoxue's heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. But looking at Tan Xiu's indifferent appearance, she was helpless even though she was angry inside. Tan Xiu no longer looked at her. His eyes shifted to Xiao Mingjun and Miao Wentang as he lightly said, "I'll give you the prescription later. Remember your promise." After saying that, he glanced at the pleasantly surprised Jia Ruidao and his disciple before he walked toward the attic filled with a classical atmosphere outside the woods. Although he was not sure whether Gu Xiaoxue's master was his former disciple or not, he believed that there was absolutely a close relationship between the two. When he first heard the news about his favorite disciple, he was ecstatic. But after breaking through the 1000 revolution array, his heart finally calmed down. Thinking about how his former best friend and lover could betray him, what if Tan Xiu didn't dare to think about it? He couldn't accept such a blow. Therefore, he directly chose to give up on getting to the bottom of this matter. Now, the most important thing for him was to cultivate and strive to restore himself to his peak state. At that time, those who had hurt him and betrayed him would have to pay a painful price. He was not a ruthless person, but he was also not a soft-hearted person. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. But if people offend me, I'll pay them back tenfold. He prayed to the gods and Buddhas to bless those who had hurt him and wait for him to personally pay them back. Chapter 86. The Everlasting Feast Hall had a total of 3 floors and was decorated in an antique style. The first floor was an open dining room with more than 200 dining tables. The second floor was a private room with a total of 108 private rooms. It was spacious, bright, and comfortable. The third floor was the VIP area. The number of guests who were qualified to enter the third floor could be counted on one hand. As Tan Xiu arrived, the restaurant manager had already been notified and warmly greeted him. "Are you Mr. Tang?" "I'm the manager of the Everlasting Feast Hall, Chu Hanqing. The little boss has just informed me that the VIP lounge on the third floor is ready. You and your friends can dine there. Everything you need here is free of charge. Lead the way." Tan Xiu calmly nodded. Jia Ruidao looked a bit excited as he followed beside Tan Xiu and said with a smile, "Brother Tang, we're really basking in your glory today. You know, countless dignitaries and dignitaries who want to climb to the third floor are stopped by the security personnel here. I never thought that I would be able to climb to the third floor of the Everlasting Feast Hall." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "It's just an external enjoyment. It's meaningless." Jia Ruidao forced a smile and said, "Everyone pursues different things. You can keep a normal mind when facing external things, but people like you are very rare." Tan Xiu thought for a moment and felt that Jia Ruidao's words were quite reasonable. Everyone has their own pursuits. Some pursue fame and fortune, some pursue power and sex, some pursue material enjoyment, and some pursue spiritual sustenance. Just like himself, he only pursued 2 things, to spend time with his mother, and to cultivate. The third floor had a total of 18 rooms, each of which was nearly 200 square meters. Although the interior decoration was also antique, it was extremely luxurious. Even though Tan Xiu didn't have much research on antiques, he could see that there were many old objects inside. Along the river during the Qingming festival painting. Just as Jia Ruidao entered the room, he noticed the calligraphy and painting on the wall. After observing it for a moment, he immediately exclaimed out loud. The restaurant manager said with a smile, "Our boss once participated in an auction in the harbor area. He bought this calligraphy and painting in that auction. I heard that he spent 9 digits to bid for it." Tan Xiu's expression changed as he asked, "Have you seen your boss?" "I wasn't talking about your little boss." The restaurant manager nodded and said, "Of course. Because I was addicted to gambling, I lost everything and even lost my position as the CEO of a listed company. At that time, his family was separated, and he didn't have enough to eat. It could be said that he was extremely down and out. Fortunately, I met Boss. She paid off my debt, taught me martial arts, and let me work for her in the Everlasting Feast Hall. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years have passed." Tan Xiu asked, "What's your boss's name? How old is he?" "We can't easily reveal our boss's name to others," said the restaurant manager. "But her age? In the past 10 years, I've only seen her 4 times. When I first met her, she looked about 20 years old, but the last time I saw her 10 years ago, she also seemed to be 20 years old. Actually, I also find it strange. It's as if time doesn't leave any traces on her body. 20 years old? She looks almost the same as Gu Xiaoxue." Tan Xiu frowned. The little girl he watched grow up was only 18 years old when she left him for the first time. Tan Xiu suddenly said, "Help me find a pen and a piece of paper." "Please wait a moment." The restaurant manager immediately informed Tan Xiu's request through the intercom and then put the menu in front of Tan Xiu and the others. When Tan Xiu and the others finished ordering, the pen and paper were handed to Tan Xiu. While waiting for the dishes to be served, Tan Xiu drew a portrait on the paper. What he drew was the appearance of his disciple in the immortal world. She was 18 years old, a flower-like age. Along with Tan Xiu's drawing, a vivid and lifelike portrait of a young girl was born. There was a beauty in the north. Her smile could topple a city, and her smile could topple a country. The girl in the painting had a sweet smile on her face, as if she had come to life. So beautiful. Jia Ruidao and his disciple, as well as the restaurant manager, were deeply attracted by the girl drawn by Tan Xiu. In a trance, they seemed to see a beautiful young girl, standing in front of them and smiling at them. "Take a look, isn't that her?" Tan Xiu looked at the restaurant manager and asked in a deep voice. The restaurant manager sobered up from his intoxication. His eyes reluctantly moved away from the drawing as he shook his head and said, "You drew a fairy maiden. Although our boss is also very beautiful, her appearance is completely different." "She isn't." A trace of loss and relief rose in Tan Xiu's heart. He wanted to see his disciple, whom he had raised and taught respectfully. But he was afraid that he would be involved with those who betrayed him. "Forget it. You go and do your work." "All right." The restaurant manager complied and left the hall. Delicious delicacies were continuously served, as well as jars of wine were placed on the table. Two young and beautiful waiters didn't leave the hall. They poured wine for Tan Xiu, Jia Ruidao, and the others, and then sat on the sofa on the other side of the hall, waiting for Tan Xiu and the others to greet them. "The wine is good." It was Tan Xiu's first time drinking wine since he returned to the modern era. He carefully tasted it and nodded in approval. He had drunk countless good wines, and he had a very high talent in winemaking. But this everlasting feast hall's wine was also good. Not bad. Just not bad. Jia Ruidao gulped down the wine in one gulp, showing an expression of wanting to continue. But when he heard Tan Xiu's words, he suddenly froze. He had lived for 60 years, yet this was the first time he had tasted such a delicious wine. How come Tan Xiu only gave it a "not bad" evaluation? His three disciples couldn't help but shake their heads upon hearing Tan Xiu's words. They were all wine lovers, and it was also their first time tasting such a good wine. Therefore, they secretly ridiculed Tan Xiu's evaluation. "Brother Tang, this is not an ordinary wine. I dare say that if we were to order wine in the box on the second floor, it would definitely not be this wine. Although the wine provided in the box on the second floor is also good, it's far inferior compared to this," Jia Ruidao said with a smile. Tan Xiu raised his glass and said, "Drink more if you like it." Late at night, 12 o'clock. Tan Xiu, Jia Ruidao, and his disciples ate and drank to their heart's content as they directly left the restaurant. Since they didn't need to pay the bill, they saved a lot of money for Jia Ruidao and his disciples. It must be known that the cheapest meal in the box on the second floor would cost at least 100,000 yuan. Tonight, they had a sumptuous meal. Jia Ruidao secretly estimated that if he had to pay, he wouldn't be able to leave without at least 1,000,000 yuan. In the dim light of the night, 5 people were strolling on the shady forest trail. Occasionally, flying insects would linger around the dim lights on the roadside. Just as they were about to reach the parking lot, the road in front of them was blocked as mocking laughter entered their ears. "Oh, isn't this Grandmaster Jia Ruidao? You lost so much during the day, how come you still have the mood to come to the everlasting feast hall to drink at night? Don't tell me you want to drown your sorrows with wine." There were a total of 12 people in front of them. The one who spoke was one of the 3 youths in front of them. Tan Xiu didn't know who he was, but Jia Ruidao and his 3 disciples knew him. He was their nemesis, Chen Kai, the famous hedonistic young master of Jingmen Island. Jia Ruidao took a step forward and coldly said, "Chen Kai, don't be insolent. We'll pay you back 100-fold for the humiliation you gave me before." Chen Kai burst into laughter and said, "Did I hear it wrong? Do you still have a chance to turn the tables? Tomorrow, I'll make you understand why the flowers are so red." Ha ha ha. "You," Jia Ruidao was furious. "Chen Kai, he's Jia Ruidao, a famous professional gambler?" a youth asked lightly. Chen Kai stared at Jia Ruidao provocatively. Then, with a flattering tone, he said, "Brother Chu, he's Jia Ruidao, the guy who almost lost his pants to me. The 3 guys behind him are all his disciples." "That's right, the youngest one is his son, a prodigal son of a bitch. The youth looked at Jia Ruidao as he lightly nodded and said, Chen Kai, remember to leave a line for others. I'd like to see you later. If they bow their heads, I'll forget about this matter. That jade pendant is very good, I like it very much. It's mine later. Good, good, good. Consider it as a gift from me to you, Brother Chu. Chen Kai happily said. Jia Ruidao was stunned. He looked at Chen Kai and then at the youth. Suddenly, he flew into a rage and roared, Chen Kai, you motherfucker. That jade pendant belongs to this old man's wife. I'll find a way to win it back. If you dare to give it to others, don't blame this old man for going all out against you. Chen Kai disdainfully said, what I've won is mine. How I deal with it is none of your business. If you have the ability, then bring it on. This young master is not afraid of you. Chen Kai. The youth who spoke just now shouted in a low voice. Chen Kai shrunk his neck as he let out a hollow laugh and said, Brother Chu, this old bastard is looking for trouble. Jia Ruidao's eyes turned blood red as blue veins protruded on his forehead. His eyes looked as though he could devour someone as he glared at Chen Kai and said, I'll naturally win back what I've lost. Tomorrow, I'll make you look good tomorrow. The youth surnamed Chu looked at Jia Ruidao and lightly said, Generally, I won't return the things I've obtained. If you want the jade pendant, look for me. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Chu Yi, from the imperial capital. Tan Xiao took a step forward as he looked at Chu Yi and said, You just said that one should leave a line for others to meet again in the future. Since that jade pendant belongs to Jia Ruidao's deceased wife, I think you should give him a chance. If he can win it back tomorrow, the jade pendant will be returned to him. But if he loses tomorrow, we'll never mention this jade pendant again, and this bet will be completely over. How about it? Chu Yi squinted his eyes as he sized up Tan Xiao. With a faint smile, he asked, Who are you? Tan Xiao. Chapter 87. Chu Yi frowned and looked at Tan Xiao again. He then shrugged and said, You're also called Tan Xiao. It seems that this name is quite popular. There are many people with the same name. Forget it. I'll give him a chance based on your name. See you at the Paradise Club tomorrow. See you there. Afraid that the other party would be overjoyed, Jia Ruidao shouted before Tan Xiao could open his mouth. Chu Yi snorted indifferently and walked toward the everlasting feast hall. Chen Kai, who was following behind Chu Yi, made a throat-slitting gesture to Jia Ruidao and left triumphantly. 10 minutes later, in a private room on the second floor of the everlasting feast hall, the restaurant manager walked in with a bottle of wine. His eyes swept over the dozens of people in the room and finally stopped on Chen Kai. He then said with a smile, Young Master Chen, you rarely come to our everlasting feast hall recently. Is there anything we didn't treat you well and made you unhappy? Chen Kai waved his hand and said with a smile, It's nothing. I've been fishing recently, and I even caught a big fish, so I didn't have time to come here. As a matter of fact, 2 esteemed guests from the imperial capital have arrived, so I brought them here. Brother Chu, Brother Bai, let me introduce you. This is the manager of this restaurant. He usually manages the business of the entire restaurant. Chu Yi and Bai Tao glanced at each other. Both of them were smart and slick people. They had been in the business world for several years and were very experienced. They instantly understood that the person who could be personally introduced by Chen Kai, even if it was just the manager of a restaurant, was probably not an ordinary person. Immediately, both of them nodded to the restaurant manager. The restaurant manager said with a smile, Welcome to the 2 distinguished guests. No wonder there are so many happy events today. It's just a pity. You came too late to see the big show tonight. If you want to see it later, I'm afraid it'll be hard to wait for a year and a half. What big show? Chen Kai asked with a confused expression. The restaurant manager said, Young Master Chen, you're a frequent guest here. You should know about the 1000 Revolution Array in our everlasting feast hall, right? Tonight, a few hours ago, 3 experts tried to break through the 1000 revolution array. 2 of them successfully broke through to the 3rd layer and became our distinguished guests. The other one. At this point, he paused for a moment. Chen Kai stood up abruptly and said in astonishment, "Someone really succeeded? And 2 at the same time. Amazing, truly amazing. Have the 2 distinguished guests left? I want to visit them in person." "They've left," the restaurant manager said with a hint of regret. Chu Yi said, "Chen Kai, he hasn't finished speaking just now." A glint flashed in the restaurant manager's eyes as he said, "The other expert who tried to break through the 1000 revolution array is quite young, but he managed to break through 5 layers in a row and succeeded all the way to the 6th layer. So far, he is our everlasting feast hall's most distinguished guest who has challenged the 1000 revolution array. This time, even our little boss is alarmed." "What? Little boss also went to challenge the array?" Chen Kai had just sat down, and his butt had barely touched the chair. Then, as if his tail was on fire, he jumped up again. "Yes," the restaurant manager said. A deep sense of loss could be seen on Chen Kai's face as he regretfully said, "I should have brought Brother Chu and Brother Bai here earlier if I knew about this earlier. What a pity. It's really a big pity." Chu Yi angrily glared at Chen Kai. He then looked at the restaurant manager again and asked, "You said that the other party is a young man? What's his name?" "Tan Xiao," the restaurant manager said with a smile. "What? What's his name?" Chu Yi and Bai Tao exclaimed at the same time. The restaurant manager revealed a confused expression as he said, "He's called Tan Xiao. I'm the one who registered his information. Of course, it's just a name and an age." Chu Yi closed his eyes, but he opened them again a few seconds later. He grabbed his mobile and dialed a cell number. "Who is it? Disturbing people's sweet dreams in the middle of the night? That's rude." A confused complaining voice came from the other end of the phone. Chu Yi said, "Young Master Long, it's me, Chu Yi. Don't sleep yet. I want to ask you something." "What is it?" Chu Yi asked. "Your idol, Tan Xiu's friend, where is he now?" "Tan Xiu. He seems to have gone to Jingmen Island. My younger brother told me this evening when we had dinner." "What's wrong? How come you're inquiring about Tan Xiu's matter?" A forced smile was revealed on Chu Yi's face. He looked at the sluggish Bai Tao and helplessly said, "If my guess is correct, I've seen Tan Xiu tonight. I seem to have a small conflict with him." "What happened?" Long Zhengyu's spirit was obviously shaken as he quickly asked. Chu Yi told the whole story and helplessly said, "Young Master Long, you don't know. Your idol seems to have done something great in Jingmen Island." Long Zhengyu said, "If so, it should be true. Tang Xiu indeed knew Jia Ruidao. Do you still remember when I, Tang Xiu, helped me with a big favor? Jia Ruidao was the one who gambled with Tan Xiu at the gambling table. But I didn't expect that they would have contact. So, I'll tell Tan Xiu about this. This is just a trivial matter between you two. However, that jade pendant of yours." Chu Yi decisively said, "Give it to him." Long Zhengyu quickly said, "Don't. Tan Xiu usually looks amiable, but he's a very arrogant person. If you give it to him for free, I'm afraid he'll be disgusted. Also, I want to give you a piece of advice. Don't deliberately throw the game on the gambling table. He's very smart, so he should be able to see it. Once he realizes it, he'll feel that it's an unfair advantage and his impression of you will be worse." This, Chu Yi suddenly felt that the jade pendant in his hand had become a hot potato. He angrily glared at Chen Kai and helplessly said, "All right. I know what to do. All right, I'm done. I'll hang up." Chu Yi hung up the phone and sent the restaurant manager away. He then looked at Bai Tao and said, "We'll see him tonight. It should be him." Bai Tao's expression was complicated as he forced a smile and said, Tan Xiu is really something. He can really cause a commotion wherever he goes. What should we do now? Chu Yi said, let's do it tomorrow. Regardless of winning or losing, we'll express our goodwill to him. All right. Bai Tao nodded. Although it was still unclear whether Tan Xiu could invite Kang Xia or not, but he had to give face to Buddha. After all, Tan Xiu had a good relationship with Long Zhengyu, and they were also Long Zhengyu's friends. It was indeed not worth it to have a falling out over a jade pendant. Chen Kai looked at Chu Yi and Bai Tao in a daze. Never in his dreams had he ever thought that these two were friends of Jia Ruidao. The most terrible thing was that they even wanted to express their goodwill to each other. He suddenly felt that he had not flattered the right person this time. Instead, it was like he had slapped the horse's hoof. Big brother Chu, how about I return the jade pendant to them? I'll also return the money I won from them. Although Chen Kai's heart was full of pain, he still probed. Chu Yi shook his head and said, no need. Tomorrow's gambling will be carried out as usual. Remember, don't let Yi Taifu throw the game, and don't tell him about tonight's matter. This, Chen Kai was secretly delighted inside, but he looked hesitant on the surface. It's decided. Chu Yi said resolutely and decisively. In the presidential suite on the top floor of the Jarvis Hotel, Tan Xiu was concentrating on practicing the gambling techniques taught by Jia Ruidao. His control was amazing. After repeated practice, in just 3 to 4 hours, he had already mastered every gambling technique to the point where it was incomparably pure. It's not that difficult. Tan Xiu tried to steal the cards and changed the cards. He easily did it. His hand speed was extremely fast, and his control of strength was just right. Even if he were to gamble with others in the casino, the other party wouldn't be aware of it. Suddenly, he missed the days when he had a storage ring. If he had a storage ring, he could easily put any gambling tools in it. At that time, even if he were to secretly cheat, he wouldn't be able to find any trace. The next day, Tan Xiu got up very late. Since the gambling would start at 2 p.m., he woke up at 10 a.m. He was full of energy after washing his face and rinsing his mouth. After contacting Jia Ruidao, the 5 of them ate something and then drove to Jingmen Island's Paradise Club. Recently, almost all the gambling addicts in Jingmen Island had heard about the gambling in the Paradise Club. Yesterday, after Jia Ruidao had left halfway, the gambling house had become even more heated. A lot of people had already concluded that today's gambling house would be the last one. Therefore, when Tan Xiu and Jia Ruidao arrived at the Paradise Club, a large number of guests had already arrived. The crowded situation made them look at each other in dismay. It must be Chen Kai. This bastard deliberately leaked the news to make us lose face. Jia Yele was a narrow-minded person. This scene suddenly made him think of something bad, so he gnashed his teeth and said, "Shut up." Although Jia Ruidao also had the same idea, but at this moment, with Tan Xiu by his side, he didn't want Tan Xiu to think that he and his father were narrow-minded and gossipy people. He and Tan Xiu had been in contact until now, so he was very clear about Tan Xiu's character and character. If they didn't perform well, they would disappoint Tan Xiu. At this time, the surrounding guests also noticed Jia Ruidao and his disciples. They stopped one by one and pointed at Jia Ruidao and his disciples while whispering, "Did you see that? That's Jia Ruidao. Those 3 beside him are his disciples. Oh, yes, one of them is his son. He's a troublemaker, a black sheep. That unlucky old Jia. This time, he bit a hard bone. I hope he won't break his teeth. However, I haven't seen the young man beside him. The father conquers the country, and the son loses the country. Jia Ruidao has such a son. It's really 8 lifetimes of bad luck. If I had such a prodigal son, I would have strangled him to death. Miserable. It's really miserable. Someone has calculated that Jia Ruidao's group has recently lost 5 to 600 million yuan, and that jade pendant is said to be the only thing left behind by his wife. If there's a win, there's a loss. Sooner or later, a professional gambler will fall in it. Chapter 88. Although the voices of the surrounding guests were not loud, Jia Ruidao and his 3 apprentices could still hear them clearly. Their complexions turned ugly one by one. This was especially true for Jia Yele. His originally handsome face had turned completely red, and his face was filled with shame and anger. Tang Xiu walked beside Jia Yele and glanced at him from the side. Then, he lightly said, "If you can't even endure such humiliation, then your achievements in this life will be very limited. You don't need to gamble today, just admit defeat." Jia Yele's anger was as if a basin of ice water was poured on him. What he was looking forward to the most was that Tan Xiu could take revenge for them. If Tan Xiu were to give up now, then they would have no hope at all. "Grandmaster Tang, don't worry." Jia Yele bowed his head and said. Tan Xiu nodded and walked to the luxury liner docked on the shore. The entire liner was 135.06 meters long and 16.5 meters wide, with a standard displacement of 24,320 tons and a height of 10.3 meters from the waterline to the deck. It could carry a total of 2,000 passengers and crew. It had a total of 4 floors. The lowest floor was the engine room and power room, the second floor was the passengers' room, the third floor was the restaurant, dance hall, KTV, gym, and other leisure and entertainment venues, and the fourth floor was the casino. Jia Ruidao was very familiar with this place. Under his lead, the 5 of them booked a few rooms on the second floor and then quietly waited for the liner to set sail. Since gambling was illegal, the liner would sail into the international waters every time the gambling started. The power of science and technology cannot be underestimated. Tan Xiu stayed in the room for a while before he left alone and went to the deck outside. At this moment, the liner had already set sail. Although its speed was slow, it still braved the wind and waves as it sailed toward the boundless sea. At this time, a lot of tourists had already settled down and came outside to enjoy the sea scenery. The noisy atmosphere made Tan Xiu, who liked peace and quiet, frown deeply. He observed the surroundings and finally stopped for a moment at the glass window on the 4th floor. The 4th floor. Tan Xiu entered the viewing hall and sat near the window. There were not many people here, only 2s and 3s of people sitting everywhere, whispering to each other. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man came to Tan Xiu accompanied by a few men who looked very successful. "Hello, Mr. Tang." The moment Miao Wentong saw Tan Xiu, he wanted to run away immediately, because facing Tan Xiu, he would be reminded of the embarrassing scene last night. However, he had to admit that Tan Xiu was really amazing. After a night of self-reflection, he was sure that he had misjudged people, said the wrong things, and done the wrong things. Therefore, after concluding his own mistake, his admiration for Tan Xiu was born spontaneously. "It's you." Tan Xiu frowned, and the expression on his face turned cold. Miao Wentong was keenly aware of Tan Xiu's attitude and suddenly felt a little embarrassed. However, he was thick-skinned enough. In order to ease the relationship with Tan Xiu, he immediately said, "Mr. Tang, I didn't sleep for half a night last night and conducted a serious self-reflection. Therefore, I apologize for my attitude yesterday. I hope that you, the Prime Minister, will be magnanimous and not stoop to my level." Tan Xiu still sat as steady as a mountain and indifferently said, "You have a good attitude." Miao Wentong quickly said, "It's my fault, so I naturally have to correct it. Mr. Tang, I hope you can give me some face to make up for my mistake yesterday. I'll invite you to the Paradise Club today to formally apologize to you." "No need." Tan Xiu directly refused. The several middle-aged men standing next to Miao Wentong were all business elites in various industries. For many people, their status was distinguished, and it was natural for them to be respected by others. However, Tan Xiu's attitude seemed to have touched their bottom line. Miao Wentong was their distinguished guest, but Tan Xiu refused him without giving any face, which made them feel humiliated. "Brother Miao, who is this?" A middle-aged man couldn't figure out Tan Xiu's background, so he asked. Miao Wentong looked at Tan Xiu with an awkward expression. He was barely able to get rid of the embarrassment when the middle-aged man next to him asked. However, he had seen countless people in his life and was very smart. He could tell that Tan Xiu didn't like to be disturbed just by looking at Tan Xiu's appearance. Therefore, he simply introduced, "This is Mr. Tang." Immediately after, Miao Wentong took out a business card holder from his pocket and took out a business card. He then put it in front of Tan Xiu and said, "This is my business card, Mr. Tang. You can call me whenever you have time. I'll owe you this apology banquet first." After saying that, he didn't even ask Tan Xiu for his business card. He nodded to the people around him and strode to the other floor of the viewing hall. His action made the business elites around him look at each other in dismay. A deep mystery arose in their hearts. Who is he? Who is he? Miao Wentong was the head of the Miao group in Qingzhou. He was a famous and powerful figure in the entire Qingzhou. Moreover, it was rumored that Miao Wentong also practiced martial arts and was very powerful. The security company he established could be ranked among the top 10 in the country. How could such a powerful figure like him be so submissive to a young man? Several business elites of Jingmen Island exchanged glances with each other. They then took out their business cards and put them on the table in front of Tan Xiu. They then introduced themselves in the simplest language and followed Miao Wentong. "These people are really boring," Tan Xiu muttered inside. He grabbed the business cards and stuffed them into his pocket without looking at them. He was not good at interpersonal communication. Even in the immortal world, recalling the past events, Tan Xiu's heart sank. Because of Jia Ruidao's matter, he would have to waste a few days. Therefore, he decided that regardless of the outcome, he must thoroughly settle this matter and then look for herbs, ores, and other rare treasures that could help him cultivate. On the other side, in front of the viewing window, a middle-aged man turned his head and glanced at Tan Xiu. Then, he looked at Miao Wentong and asked in a low voice, "Brother Miao, what's the origin of that young man surnamed Tang? He didn't even give you face." "Yeah. Who the hell is that kid? Isn't he too arrogant?" Another middle-aged man spoke with a bit of indignation in his tone, yet his voice was very low. Miao Wentong forced a smile and said, "You should have heard about what happened in the Everlasting Feast Hall last night, right? Xiao Mingjin and I successfully broke into the third layer of the Thousand Revolution Array and became the Everlasting Feast Hall's VIPs. And he's the one who broke into the sixth layer." "What? How is that possible? Heavens!" Several Jingmen Island's business elites suddenly looked shocked and exclaimed out loud. Miao Wentong forced a smile and said, "My reaction was the same as yours. I also thought it was impossible. But the fact is that I saw it with my own eyes. How could I be wrong? The reason why I apologized to him was because I ridiculed him before he broke into the Thousand Revolution Array yesterday. As a result, I was slapped in the face." A middle-aged man whispered, "Brother Miao, he's too young. He looks like he's in his 20s. How could he be so powerful?" Miao Wentong forced a smile and said, "You ask me, but who should I ask? In short, we shouldn't provoke such a young man with unfathomable strength and aptitude. In this world, it's better to have more friends than more enemies." "Yes, yes, yes." Several people repeatedly nodded in agreement. At 1:50 p.m. Tan Xiu came to the casino on the 4th floor. At this moment, the casino was crowded with gamblers trying their skills in front of all kinds of gambling equipment. The Paradise Club provided gambling venues, but they wouldn't intervene in the gambling. However, the Paradise Club would take a cut of the total amount of gambling on each table. Although it was only 1%, but they still made a lot of money every day by taking a cut. "Grandmaster Tang, the gambling will be held in the VIP private room. My master is already waiting for you in the VIP private room." Gong Dalong was waiting in the casino's lobby. Upon seeing Tan Xiu's arrival, he immediately respectfully greeted him. Tan Xiu nodded and said, "There are only a few minutes left before the gambling starts. Take me there. I still have other things to do after this game." "All right." Gong Dalong respectfully replied. In the VIP private room of hundreds of square meters, all kinds of gambling equipment had been prepared. Apart from Jia Ruidao and his apprentices, as well as Chen Kai and his professional gambler Yi Taifu, there were also hundreds of gamblers who came to watch. The gamblers who could come to this VIP private room were not ordinary. At least, they must be recognized by one of the parties before they could be allowed to enter. Not only Miao Wentong, but also several Jingmen Island's business elites. Upon seeing Tan Xiu's arrival, Miao Wentong suddenly stared blankly. It seemed that he knew one of the gambling parties. The others also looked at each other in dismay. Although there were many people in the VIP private room, the order was very good. More than 20 security personnel in black suits ensured that no one would disturb the gambling house during the process. "Brother Tang, you finally came. The gambling game is about to start." Jia Ruidao and Tan Xiu were burning with impatience as he quickly came to greet him. Tan Xiu said, "I know what I'm doing." His eyes looked at Chen Kai, who was sitting across the table. However, he found that Chen Kai's eyes were a bit erratic. On the contrary, the bald middle-aged man beside Chen Kai had a bad expression in his eyes. He rubbed his hands and looked eager to try. Tan Xiu walked a few steps forward. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he looked at the middle-aged man and asked with a sinking voice, "Are you Yi Taifu? The professional gambler known as Golden Finger in Macau?" The middle-aged man raised his chin and looked at Tan Xiu with contempt and said, "Yes, it's me." "Who are you?" "Jia Ruidao lost and didn't dare to come to the table, so he invited you to gamble with me." Tan Xiu pulled out a chair and sat opposite Yi Taifu. He then said indifferently, "Yes. Today, I'll accompany you to play. However, I'm afraid of trouble, and I don't like complicated gambling games. How about we play something simple today?" Yi Taifu asked, "How simple?" Tan Xiu said, "Let's tie a golden flower and compare the size. What do you think?" "Tie a golden flower. Compare the size?" Yi Taifu looked at Tan Xiu with a strange expression. He then said with a smile, "Are you sure you want to compete with me in this? I'll tell you in advance that the bet can't be too small. The base bet is 1 million. Do you dare?" "Why wouldn't I dare?" Tan Xiu's eyes turned cold as he happily said. Chapter 89. Jia Ruidao, who was standing next to Tan Xiu, immediately reminded him, "Brother Tang, my jade pendant." Tan Xiu glanced at him and lightly said, "Don't be impatient. Since the other party has given us the opportunity, I believe they won't go back on their words." "All right." Jia Ruidao was a bit reluctant, but he didn't dare to go against Tan Xiu's words at this time. A strange expression appeared on Miao Wentong's face in the crowd. He didn't expect that Tan Xiu would turn out to be one of the gambling parties. He knew that Tan Xiu was a cultivator and had great attainments in arrays. But he didn't expect that Tan Xiu was also a gambler. Originally, he was somewhat reluctant when he was pulled over by several Jingmen Island's business elites. But now, a strong interest arose in his heart. He wanted to see how strong Tan Xiu, who had reached the heaven-defying realm in breaking arrays, was in gambling. At this time, from the VIP private room's door, Ouyang Lulu came in with a middle-aged woman wearing white gloves. Chu Yi and Bai Tao followed behind them. "Welcome everyone to my Paradise Club. As the name suggests, this is a paradise for the guests. I hope you can have a good time here. Let me introduce myself. I'm Ouyang Lulu, the owner of the Paradise Club. The one beside me is the most outstanding dealer of our Paradise Club casino. I can guarantee that she will be the one presiding over this gambling house. She will be absolutely fair and just. Ouyang Lulu observed Tan Xiao and Yi Taifu a few times as she spoke with a beaming smile. Clap, 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 warm applause reverberated in the VIP private room. The effect of a beautiful woman was very good, and the effect of a noble beauty was even better. Whether it was her figure or appearance, Ouyang Lulu belonged to the world's first class. Her words won the applause of the entire hall. The charming dealer came to the gambling table and calmly said with a smile, "Have the two of you decided on the method of gambling?" Yi Taifu said, "Tai Jin Hua." The dealer's expression froze as a smile outlined on the corner of her mouth. As the top dealer of the Paradise Club, she presided over almost all big gambling houses. However, there were very few people who would play the golden flower in such a big gamble, especially when two people were betting against each other. She looked at Tan Xiao and asked with a smile, "Are the rules set? How much is the base price? What is the minimum increment for each bid? What's the upper limit?" Yi Taifu stood up. His arms propped on the gambling table as he grinned and said, "This little brother is very arrogant and doesn't want to waste time here. Therefore, I suggest that the minimum bid should be 1 million, and each increment should not be less than 1 million. Also, there's no upper limit." The dealer looked at Tan Xiao. Tan Xiao said indifferently, "I have no opinion." The dealer nodded and said, "Since the two of you have made your decision, then we'll respect this bet. Now, please show me your chips." Jia Ruidao quickly took the chips from his son and placed them in front of Tan Xiao. Then, he forced a smile and said, "Brother Tang, I've lost all the money I borrowed. There were only 56 million left. You see." "Enough," Tan Xiao said indifferently. A few meters away from the gambling table, Yi Taifu heard Jia Ruidao's words. He suddenly burst into laughter and said, "I thought that today's bet would be big. Turns out you only have 56 million left. Boring, really boring. I say, Jia Ruidao, you're a famous professional gambler. Don't tell me that you can't borrow money from others anymore." Ha ha ha. Many of the onlookers had seen the bet between Jia Ruidao and Yi Taifu before. They also knew that Jia Ruidao had lost a lot of money recently. However, the winner was the king, while the loser was the thief. The loser would never be praised. Suddenly, the sound of discussion sounded in the surroundings. "Jia Ruidao is actually strong on the outside but weak on the inside. How much money did he lose? It's just a few 100 million, and now he can't borrow money. Is it because his character is too bad? Or is he not good at making friends? He deserves to lose. His capital is so little, yet he still dared to continue gambling. He really doesn't know how he died. A few days ago, I saw him lose so much that his eyes turned red. He even lost the only relic left by his wife, a jade pendant of excellent quality. I thought that I would see an unprecedented bet today, but I didn't expect that Jia Ruidao would be so poor. 56 million. I'm afraid the speed at which he loses today is even faster than before. Yeah. With such a small amount of capital, letting such a young man to gamble on the stage, isn't this the same as giving money to others? I've seen stupid people, but I've never seen someone stupid to this extent. I regret coming." Jia Ruidao was a professional gambler. His gambling skills were superb, and his hearing was naturally very good. The surrounding people's discussion was clearly heard by him. In a flash, his old face turned red, and his eyes were filled with grievance. Even his 3 apprentices' eyes were almost spurting out flames of anger. They were glaring at Yi Taifu, wishing that they could pull out his tendons and skin him alive. Tan Xiao looked at Yi Taifu with cold eyes. He secretly sneered in his heart. Although standing high and seeing far, standing high also meant falling hard. If he lost this bet, then so be it. But if he were to throw away his helmet and throw away his armor, and lose everything, when the time comes, he would probably regret his arrogance to the point that his intestines would turn green. Less nonsense, let's begin. Yi Taifu arrogantly gave Tan Xiao a provocative look. He sat back on the chair and said with a sinking tone, "Let's begin." Ding! The dealer nodded and pulled the bell. The entire VIP private room suddenly quieted down. She took the 8 decks of cards from the waiter and placed them on the table. Then, she took out a brand new deck of cards. After a dazzling shuffle, she said, "Both sides, please check the cards." No need. Yi Taifu believed in the fairness of the Paradise Club casino, so he directly refused. Tan Xiu also shook his head. He was not afraid of the other party's tricks. Moreover, if the other party really wanted to play tricks, even if he checked the cards, he wouldn't be able to find anything fishy. The dealer slightly nodded. After cutting the cards, each person was dealt 3 cards, and then the rest of the cards were placed on the table in front of her. Tan Xiu picked up his card and casually glanced at it. A bit of a smile was revealed on his face. He had been paying attention to the dealer's action of shuffling the cards. Others might not be able to see it with their eyes, but he could clearly observe it with his spiritual sense. He even knew which card was in the stack, what number it was, and what kind of flower it was. A pair of 2s and a 5 of hearts. Tan Xiu looked at his card and observed the other side's cards through his spiritual sense. To his satisfaction, the first deck of cards was bigger than the other side. Because the other side's biggest card was an ace of spades. The other 2 cards were a 5 of hearts and a 3 of hearts. 1 million. Yi Taifu revealed a trace of a smile. He grabbed the chips in front of him and directly threw them in the middle of the table. Tan Xiu pretended to hesitate for a moment. Then, he also grabbed the chips in front of him and threw them in the middle. However, Yi Taifu had been staring at Tan Xiu's expression. Tan Xiu's moment of hesitation was keenly caught by him. Therefore, he once again grabbed the chips, threw them and said, 2 million. Tan Xiu also directly threw 2 million chips and said, "Call." Yi Taifu was startled. He deeply looked at Tan Xiu, threw 2 million chips and said, "Continue to call." According to the cards, Yi Taifu was very clear that his cards were very small. But he didn't want to give up in the first round. Especially when he was keenly aware of Tan Xiu's moment of hesitation. He guessed that Tan Xiu's cards were absolutely not big. Moreover, this first round was just an appetizer. Even if he really lost in the end, he wouldn't lose much money. Chen Kai had promised that today's gambling stake would total to 500 million. "I also call," Tan Xiu said again. Yi Taifu sneered inwardly. In order to intimidate Tan Xiu, he directly pushed the pile of chips in front of him, which represented 10 million, and said with a sinking voice, 10 million. Tan Xiu was obviously stunned for a moment. He didn't understand where Yi Taifu's confidence came from. He even bet 10 million all at once. In addition to the money on the table earlier, each of them had taken out 14 million in this round. However, no matter what the other party's reason was, his cards were bigger than the other party's, so he didn't need to be afraid. 20 million. Tan Xiu pushed the chips and calmly said. Yi Taifu's brows wrinkled. He looked at Tan Xiu's appearance. He thought that Tan Xiu was pretending to be calm, but in fact, he also had the same intention of intimidating him. Therefore, he once again pushed out 20 million chips and lightly said, "It's just the beginning. No need to play so big. I'll open your cards with 20 million. Are you sure?" Tan Xiu calmly asked. Yi Taifu sneered, "Of course I'm sure. Don't tell me you don't want to open your cards." Tan Xiu didn't speak and directly opened his cards. In a flash, Yi Taifu's complexion turned red. An unwilling expression was revealed in his eyes. He had guessed that Tan Xiu's cards were not big. Looking at Tan Xiu's cards, he knew that his guess was correct. However, this small card was enough to crush him to death. However, in order to not let Tan Xiu's momentum rise, he casually threw away the cards in his hand and lightly said, "Experts don't win the first 3 rounds. Seeing that you're a young man, I'll let you taste the taste of winning money. But after the 3rd round, you must be mentally prepared." Tan Xiu looked at the dealer who pushed all the chips in the middle of the table aside from the 1 million chips. A trace of a smile appeared on his face as he nodded and said, "Thank you for letting me win. I'll wait and see." The first round. He had won a whopping 34 million. This kind of situation made him sigh. Winning money in gambling was too easy. No wonder so many people liked to gamble. After all, everyone wanted to have the dream of suddenly becoming rich. Jia Rui, who was standing beside Tan Xiu, had a trace of happiness on his face. After all, Tan Xiu had a good start. This was a very auspicious event. Even his 3 apprentices were beaming with happiness. They were extremely satisfied with Tan Xiu's first win. The people who were watching the battle all had surprised expressions on their faces. After all, they didn't expect that an unknown young man would be able to win against the famous Yi Taifu in the first round. Although Yi Taifu said that he would let Tan Xiu win, everyone could see that his words were insincere. Chapter 90. The second game. After the dealer shuffled and dealt the cards, he looked at Tan Xiu and said, "Mr. Tang won the last game. This time, it's Mr. Tang's turn to speak first." This time, Tan Xiu didn't open his 3 cards because he could use his divine sense to observe his cards. He could also observe Yi Taifu's cards. This kind of magical cheating method was absolutely a divine tool to swindle people. 10 million. Tan Xiu pushed out 10 million chips and said without batting an eyelid. Yi Taifu saw that Tan Xiu didn't look at his cards. In order to not lose his momentum, he also chose to hide his cards and directly pushed out 10 million chips and said, "I follow, 20 million. Tan Xiu didn't even blink and pushed out his chips again. Yi Taifu frowned and pushed out 20 million chips again and said, "Continue to follow, 50 million. Tan Xiu calmly said. "What?" Yi Taifu was stunned. His eyes revealed a disbelieving expression. He had been a professional gambler for more than 20 years, but this was the first time he met someone like Tan Xiu. This was only the second game, but Tan Xiu didn't even look at his cards and directly threw out 80 million chips. One must know. They were playing Golden Flower. Tan Xiu had just won 34 million. Adding his original capital, he only had a total of 90 million. In other words, once Yi Taifu followed, he was bound to see Tan Xiu's cards. This was also the last time he would bet. After hesitating for a moment, he reached out and touched his 3 cards. 7 of hearts, 7 of spades, 5 of clubs. His biggest card was 7 pairs. Yi Taifu was silent for a moment. He pushed out 100 million chips and said with a sinking voice, "I follow. Look at your cards." Tan Xiu faintly smiled. He reached out and opened his 3 cards, Jack of Hearts, Jack of Spades, and 3 of Diamonds. His biggest card was J pairs. In an instant, Yi Taifu's complexion turned pale. He never dreamed that the second game would turn out to be like this. Not only did he lose, but he also lost 131 million yuan. Including the 34 million yuan he lost in the first round, he had lost 165 million yuan in just 2 rounds. Yi Taifu raised his head and glanced at Qin Kai at the side. He saw that Qin Kai's complexion was unsightly. Suddenly, he felt somewhat guilty in his heart. However, he firmly believed that Tan Xiu was just lucky in these 2 matches. However, he did not even use his real gambling skills. The surrounding onlookers began to discuss among themselves. Amazing. It's only been a few minutes, right? That unknown young man had actually won a total of 165 million. This speed is much faster than all the money printing machines in the world running at the same time. There will be talents in every generation, and they will lead the way for decades. Yi Taifu's reputation in the professional gambling world could be said to have spread far and wide. But now, he actually lost twice to an unknown young man. The younger generation will surpass the older in time. No wonder so many people like to gamble. The speed of making money is really fast. Even I can't help but want to play a few rounds. I thought there wouldn't be a good show today. But now I realize that I was wrong. I really hope that young man can show off his skills and create a miracle. His luck is really good. Moreover, this young man's courage is really boundless. He didn't even look at his cards and directly threw out 80 million. Admirable. Those who achieve great things must have great courage. Today, I have seen it for myself. Jia Ruidao beside Tan Xiu was ecstatic. Jia Ruidao's 3 apprentices were also ecstatic. Even Miao Wentong in the crowd had a whole new level of respect for Tan Xiu. Chu Yi and Bai Tao, who were in the crowd, were even more interested in Tan Xiu. Among the crowd, there was only one person who had little interest in Tan Xiu, and that was the owner of the Paradise Club, Ouyang Lulu. She only thought that Tan Xiu's luck was good in the first 2 rounds. The 3rd round. The dealer shuffled the cards. After the cards were dealt, she looked at Tan Xiu and said, "Mr. Tang, you won the last round. Please speak first." Tan Xiu's divine sense had clearly observed the cards on both sides. He found that his 3 cards were Jack of Spades, 8 of Hearts, and 2 of Hearts. Yi Taifu's 3 cards were King of Hearts, 9 of Clubs, and 5 of Clubs. His cards were not as big as Yi Taifu's, 10 million. Tan Xiu directly pushed out 10 million chips and calmly said. Yi Taifu didn't choose to hide his cards this time, but directly picked them up. When he saw his cards, he secretly shook his head. He threw the cards and said, "I'm not calling." Tan Xiu faintly smiled as he looked at the dealer who pushed the chips to him and said, "You've let me win 3 times. I hope you won't let me win again next time." Yi Taifu coldly snorted and said, "Rest assured, I'll make you leave crying." Tan Xiu said without being salty nor light, "Don't talk big until the end." The 4th round. The dealer shuffled the cards and dealt them. Then he said, "Mr. Tang, you won the last round. Please speak first." Tan Xiu had already seen the cards on both sides through his divine sense. He immediately laughed in his heart. He directly pushed out 10 million chips and said, 10 million. Yi Taifu was silent for a moment. He also chose to hide his cards and followed with 10 million chips. Tan Xiu still didn't look at his cards and pushed out 50 million chips. Yi Taifu stared blankly for a moment. Suddenly, a bad premonition arose in his heart. However, he firmly believed in his gambling skills. Even if the dealer gave him a small hand, he still had a way to turn defeat into victory. Therefore, he directly pushed out 50 million chips and lightly said, "I'm calling." Tan Xiu directly pushed out all the chips in front of him at once. He lightly smiled and said, "I have a total of 222 million chips. I'm calling all of them. If you can win this round, I'll immediately leave. If you lose, your arrogant words are the same as slapping your own face. Continue or end, I'll give you the choice." Yi Taifu's eyelids twitched. The bad premonition in his heart was getting more and more intense. Tan Xiu pushed out all the chips, indicating that he followed with 161 million. If he followed, he would have to pay the same amount. Moreover, this was the case after he chose to hide his cards. If he looked at his cards and lost, he would have to double the amount. What should I do? Should I look or not? Follow or not? Yi Taifu pondered for a moment and finally decided to look at his cards: Ace of Diamonds, 8 of Diamonds, 5 of Diamonds. Golden Flower. Moreover, it's Ace Gold. A trace of a smile outlined on the corner of Yi Taifu's mouth. He directly counted 322 million chips and said with a faint smile, "I'm calling." "Open your cards." Tan Xiu secretly laughed inside. His fingers flicked, and the second card of the 3 cards instantly shot toward the stack of cards in front of the dealer. Almost in a flash, the card in the stack shot toward the card in front of him at a strange angle. As for the card he ejected, it remained in the stack of cards. The cards were exchanged at an extremely fast speed. It was so fast that the naked eye simply couldn't capture their trajectory. Even professional gamblers like Yi Taifu and Jia Ruidao, who had extremely sharp eyesight, couldn't detect it. However, among the people present, there was someone who noticed it. It was the cultivator, Miao Wentong. In the situation where no one was aware of it, a faint smile appeared on Miao Wentong's face. 3 aces. Tan Xiu opened his cards and said with a faint smile. He was very clear that Yi Taifu had lost. Moreover, he didn't even have the chance to cheat. Impossible. Yi Taifu suddenly jumped up from his chair when he saw the 3 cards that Tan Xiu opened. His eyes were as big as a brass bell, and an unbelievable light burst out from his eyes. He had calculated thousands of times and was even prepared to cheat. But he never thought that Tan Xiu's cards would turn out to be 3 aces. How to change? Change to the lowest card, 2, 3, and 5. Apart from these 3 cards, there were no other 3 cards that could win against Tan Xiu. But, he didn't prepare the lowest card, 2, 3, and 5. Tan Xiu looked at Yi Taifu, who had lost his composure, and lightly said, "Maybe you still have a chance to win. Show me your cards." Yi Taifu's face was ashen. He absent-mindedly turned his head to look at Chen Kai and said with difficulty, "I'm sorry, I lost. I'm powerless to reverse the situation. Powerless to reverse the situation." These words were like a heavy hammer that fiercely pounded on Chen Kai's heart. One must know that Yi Taifu had lost 333 million in this round. Coupled with the 166 million he had lost before, he had lost a total of 499 million. He had taken out 500 million this time, but Yi Taifu had only won 4 rounds, and he only had 1 million left. This result was hard for him to accept. The surrounding crowd suddenly boiled up. Countless people looked at Tan Xiu with disbelief. They could feel their heartbeats speeding up. The sound of discussion was much louder than before. "Too awesome. He won 4 rounds in a row and directly won the opponent's money, leaving only 1 million. This heaven-defying means is simply amazing. God of gamblers. Yi Taifu is already powerful enough. But this young man directly crushed him to death. It seems that after tonight, this young man named Tan Xiu will surely be famous in the gambling world. He's simply my idol. 4 rounds and winning nearly 500 million. This should be the craziest gambling house in recent years, right? This Tan Xiu is really unfathomable. Yi Taifu has lost his face today. He was so arrogant before, but now his face has been ruthlessly slapped. I suddenly remembered a saying, the higher you stand, the harder you fall. In the Yangtze River, the new waves push the old waves, and the old waves die on the beach. Yi Taifu sat back on the chair in a daze and painfully closed his eyes. He was once the winner praised by countless people. But today, he had fallen from the high clouds, smashing his body into pieces. He was finished. He knew that he was finished. He knew that his reputation would plummet in the future. Even if he returned to the casino in Macau, the treatment he would get would plummet. In the crowd, Chu Yi and Bai Tao looked at each other in dismay. They were sure that Yi Taifu absolutely did not throw the game. Because Chen Kai did not have the courage to give away 500 million to Tan Xiu. But Tan Xiu won so easily. Moreover, he won 4 rounds in a row, and won so beautifully. Who was Yi Taifu? Even if they did not like gambling, they had heard of Yi Taifu's great name. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.